Imagine yourself on a vast, quiet beach at the edge of a great ocean. The sand is soft, the sun is warm, and you have decided to build the most magnificent sandcastle the world has ever seen. You pour all of your attention into it, shaping intricate walls and delicate towers. You feel a sense of pride as it takes form, a monument to your effort and your vision. But even as you work, a part of your mind is not focused on the creation. It is turned towards the water, watching the endless rhythm of the waves. With every wave that recedes, you feel a moment of relief, and with every wave that gathers and swells, a knot of anxiety tightens in your chest. Your peace is fragile, wholly dependent on the next movement of the tide. This sandcastle, this desperate and beautiful project, is how many of us live our lives. The castle is the life we are told to build, a structure of supposed permanence. Its walls are a stable career. Its towers are our relationships, which we expect to never change. Its moat is our bank account, which we hope will protect us from all harm. We are taught that happiness is the successful construction and defense of this fortress. And so we spend our days in a state of constant, low-grade vigilance, guarding against the inevitable tide of change. We live with an invisible exhaustion, a quiet hum of anxiety that underlies everything we do. Because deep down, we know the tide will come in. The tension of modern life, the stress that weighs upon our hearts, does not come from change itself. It comes from our resistance to it. It is the strain of holding on so tightly to things that are, by their very nature, meant to flow. But what if there was another way? What if true peace was not found in building a stronger wall, but in learning to love the ocean? What if, instead of building a sandcastle, we learned how to swim, how to float, how to let the waves carry us? This is not a new idea. It is one of the oldest and most profound insights into the human condition, an observation made over 2.5 millennia ago by a man who decided to stop running and simply look. His discovery was not a religion that demands belief, but a gentle, compassionate invitation. An invitation to look honestly at the nature of our world and the nature of our own minds. Over the next 3 hours, we will accept that invitation. We will not be turning away from the challenges of our lives. We will be turning towards them with a new understanding. This is a journey to explore the liberating truth of impermanence, to learn how to find our footing on shifting sands, and to discover the profound peace that arises, not from resisting life, but from finally, fully embracing it. To understand the peace that comes from embracing change, we must first look unflinchingly at the prison we build for ourselves. We must examine the very foundation of our anxiety. It is a foundation so common, so deeply embedded in our way of thinking, that we mistake it for solid ground. This is the foundation built on the illusion of permanence. It is the unspoken assumption that things should and could last forever. Our journey does not begin by learning a new skill, but by unlearning a very old and damaging habit, the habit of clinging. Clinging, or what in the ancient language of the Buddha is called upadana, is a word that goes far deeper than simple desire. It is not just wanting something. It is a grasping, a tightening of the mind, a desperate attempt to fuse our sense of self with something outside of us. It is the belief that our happiness, our very identity, depends on possessing and maintaining that thing. This clinging is not a single act, but a constant, energy-consuming activity that we perform from morning until night. We see it most obviously with material possessions. You buy a new car, and for a fleeting moment, there is joy. But immediately, the clinging begins. You park it far away from other cars. You worry about the first scratch. You feel a pang of anxiety when a bird flies overhead. The car is no longer just a tool for transportation. It has become an extension of your ego, and every potential threat to the car feels like a threat to you. The joy of ownership is quickly replaced by the burden of preservation. The same is true for our homes, our clothes, our technology. We acquire them seeking security and satisfaction, but we have unknowingly signed a contract of perpetual worry, because we have attached our inner peace to the fate of an external object that is, by its very nature, subject to decay, damage, and loss. But this clinging goes far deeper than the things we can touch. We cling ferociously to our ideas and opinions. We hold on to our political beliefs, our social views, our personal philosophies, as if they were solid gold. When someone challenges these ideas, we don't feel that they are merely discussing a concept. We feel that they are attacking us. Our heart rate increases, our voice gets louder, our mind closes. We are not defending a truth. We are defending a piece of our identity, a part of the sandcastle we have so carefully constructed. We would rather be right than be at peace, because we have fused our sense of self-worth with the correctness of our thoughts. Perhaps the most powerful and painful form of clinging is to our roles and our very identity. We think, I am a doctor, I am a mother, I am an artist, I am a successful person. These are useful labels for navigating the world, but the problem begins when we believe they are who we truly are. The doctor who is forced to retire feels a terrifying emptiness because the identity they clung to has been taken away. The mother whose children have grown and left home feels a profound sense of loss because the role that defined her for decades is now gone. The successful entrepreneur whose business fails doesn't just experience financial loss, they experience a collapse of self because they had built their entire identity on the shifting sands of success. We cling to these temporary roles, these fleeting name tags, as if they were a permanent soul, and so we are destined to suffer when they inevitably change. So why do we do this? Why do we build our psychological homes on such unstable ground? Because permanence is a construct of the mind, designed for survival, but mistaken for reality. The universe does not operate on the principle of stability. It operates on the principle of change. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus said that you can never step in the same river twice, for it is not the same river, and you are not the same person. This is not poetry. It is a literal, scientific fact. The cells in your body are constantly dying and being replaced. The person you were 7 years ago is on a cellular level, almost a completely different person from who you are today. The thoughts you had a moment ago have vanished. The emotions you feel now will soon be replaced by others. The mountains we see as symbols of eternity are being relentlessly worn down by wind and rain. The stars in the sky are being born and are dying in a cosmic dance of unimaginable scale. Everything, from the subatomic particle to the galactic cluster, is in a state of constant, unending flux. Our mind, however, cannot easily operate in a world of pure flux. To plan a meal, to build a bridge, to learn a language, the mind must create a working model of reality. It takes a snapshot of the world and says, this is how things are. This is a necessary and useful tool. The illusion, the source of all our trouble, is that we forget we are looking at a snapshot. We believe the photograph is the living, breathing reality. We fall in love with the static image and then feel betrayed when reality, in its infinite, flowing nature, refuses to conform to our picture. We want the world to be a museum of perfectly preserved exhibits, when in fact it is a wild, untamable river. Beneath this illusion, beneath all our frantic clinging, lies a deep and primal fear. It is the fear of uncertainty, the fear of loss, and ultimately, the fear of death. Our brain is wired to seek patterns and predictability. The unknown feels dangerous, and so we cling to the familiar job, a relationship, a belief system, not always because it brings us joy, but because it brings us a sense of certainty. We prefer the misery of a known situation to the terrifying freedom of an unknown future. We are afraid of loss, so we grasp with all our might, paradoxically ensuring that when the loss inevitably comes, it will be all the more painful. Our tight grip does not prevent things from slipping through our fingers. It only ensures that our knuckles are white and our palms are raw when they do. There is a powerful story that illustrates this delusion. There was once a rich farmer whose land had produced an abundant harvest. He looked at his barns, which were already full, and he thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I will do. I will tear down my old barns and build bigger ones, and there I will store my surplus grain. And I will say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid up for many years. Take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry." But in the quiet of that night, a voice came to him saying, "You fool, this very night your soul will be required of you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself?" This story is not a lesson against planning or enjoying the fruits of one's labor. It is a profound teaching about the folly of a certain mindset. The farmer's error was not in his wealth, but in his assumption of permanence. Many years, he told himself, he saw his life stretching out before him as a solid, predictable road. He saw his possessions as a permanent fortress against suffering. He had completely forgotten the fragile, transient nature of his own existence. He was so busy building a bigger sandcastle that he failed to notice the sun had set and the tide was already at his feet. This brings us to the heart of the matter, to a concept at the core of the Buddhist understanding of life, the concept of dukkha. This word is often translated as suffering, but its meaning is far more subtle and profound. It is not just about the pain of a wound or the grief of loss. Dukkha is the pervasive, background hum of unsatisfactoriness that we experience when our minds are out of sync with reality. It is the friction between our craving for permanence and the world's inherent impermanence. It is the low-level anxiety of the sandcastle builder. It is the restless dissatisfaction of the rich farmer, who, even in his abundance, could only think of needing more and bigger. It is that feeling that something is just not quite right, that feeling of being incomplete, that constant, quiet, striving for a state of perfect, unshakable security that never arrives. Dukkha arises every time we wish a pleasant moment would last forever. It arises every time we fight against an unpleasant feeling, demanding that it go away. It is the ultimate result of building our lives on a cracked foundation, of trying to find stability where none can possibly exist. Before we can find true peace, we must first be willing to see these cracks. We must have the courage to admit that the ground we have been standing on is not solid. It is a ground made of our own beliefs, our own assumptions, and our own fears. We have been trying to stand still on a moving walkway, and the effort has been exhausting us. Now that we have examined the cracks in our foundation, now that we have felt the subtle trembling of the ground beneath our feet, it is time to look directly at the force that creates these fissures. It is time to understand the fundamental law of the universe that our minds try so hard to deny. It is time to turn our full attention to the nature of impermanence itself. We have felt the cracks in the foundation of our lives, the subtle and persistent anxiety that comes from building on the illusion of permanence. This feeling is a symptom, a warning light on the dashboard of the soul. To understand it, we must now look directly at the engine of reality itself. We must turn our attention to the one law that governs every single thing in existence, the law our minds have been trained to ignore, deny, and resist. This is the law of impermanence. In the ancient Pali language, it is called anicca. And understanding it, truly and deeply, is not a cause for despair, but the very beginning of freedom. Let us start with the most intimate territory we know, the boundaries of our own skin. Look at your hands. They appear solid, stable, constant. They are your hands, the same hands that held a pencil as a child, the same hands that will hold a warm cup of tea tomorrow. This is the story our mind tells us, the convenient snapshot it takes for daily use. But the reality is far more dynamic, far more mysterious. On a microscopic level, your body is a bustling metropolis in a constant state of renewal and decay. The cells that form your skin are right now dying and being sloughed off, replaced by new ones from underneath. The lining of your stomach is completely renewed every few days. The red blood cells carrying life through your veins have a lifespan of only about 4 months. Even your bones, which seem so solid and permanent, are being continuously broken down and rebuilt by specialized cells in a process called remodeling. You are not a static sculpture. You are a river of flesh and bone. You are a process, a pattern, a slow-burning fire of biological activity. The body you inhabit today is not the identical body you inhabited yesterday, and it will not be the identical body you inhabit tomorrow. It is a flowing, changing, magnificent process. Take a single breath. Feel the air enter your nostrils, fill your lungs, and feel it leave. That breath is gone forever. A new breath takes its place, in and out. Each breath is a reminder of anicca. Each pulse of your heart is a wave in the unceasing ocean of change. We resist this. We seek diets and creams and procedures to halt the process, to freeze the snapshot, to make the river stand still. But this is like trying to cup water in your hands and command it not to flow. The struggle itself is the only source of our suffering. The water, in its flowing, is perfect. Now, let us expand our view from the microcosm of the body to the macrocosm of the world around us. We look to the mountains and see them as symbols of permanence and stability. Yet, every drop of rain, every gust of wind, every cycle of freezing and thawing is patiently, relentlessly grinding them down, carrying tiny particles of them to the sea. Over millennia, the mightiest peaks are turned into sand. This process is too slow for our hurried eyes to see, so we create the illusion that they are unchanging. We look at the cycle of the seasons. We may love the warmth of summer and cling to it, dreading the coming of autumn and the cold of winter. But winter is not the enemy of summer. The decay and quiet of autumn and winter are the necessary preparation for the vibrant rebirth of spring. Without the falling leaves, the soil would not be enriched. Without the period of rest, the energy for new growth would not be gathered. Life and death, growth and decay, are not opposites. They are two phases of a single, unified process. Impermanence is the engine that drives this beautiful, intelligent cycle. Look to the grand sweep of human history. The Roman Empire seemed eternal, an unshakable power that would rule the world forever. Where is it now? It is dust, ruins, and stories in books. The great library of Alexandria, holding the accumulated knowledge of the ancient world, was thought to be a permanent monument to human intellect. It is gone. Every empire, every dynasty, every civilization rises like a great wave, takes its shape for a time, and inevitably recedes back into the ocean of history. We, in our time, believe our technology, our nations, our ways of life are the final, permanent state of things. But we are just another wave, and our clinging to the belief that our wave is special, that our wave will not fall, is the source of so much collective fear and conflict. Let us look further still, to the silent, immense stage of the cosmos. Every star you see in the night sky is a temporary event. It is born from a cloud of dust and gas. It burns for millions or billions of years, and then it dies, sometimes in a spectacular explosion called a supernova, scattering its elements back into space to form new stars, new planets, and perhaps new life. The very iron in your blood was forged in the heart of a dying star billions of years ago. You are literally made of stardust. You are the recycled remnants of cosmic impermanence. There is nothing in the known universe that is exempt from this law. It is the one great unifying principle. To resist it is to resist the very nature of reality. This is the moment for a profound shift in perspective. Our conditioned mind hears all of this and concludes, everything is transient, so nothing matters. This is a bleak and hopeless philosophy, but this is a complete misunderstanding. The truth is the exact opposite. Impermanence is not what makes life meaningless. It is precisely what makes life possible, precious, and meaningful. Imagine for a moment a world without impermanence. A world where everything was frozen, static, and permanent. A seed would remain a seed forever, never becoming a flower. A wound would never heal. A misunderstanding between two people could never be resolved, as their minds would be fixed and unchanging. Children would never grow. We could never learn, never mature, never become wiser. A world without impermanence would be a dead world, a cosmic photograph with no life in it. Change is not the enemy of life. It is the very definition of it. The fact that this moment will never come again is what makes this moment so profoundly precious. The fact that our loved ones will not be with us forever is what makes our time with them a sacred gift. The beauty of the cherry blossom is not in the flower itself, but in the poignant knowledge that it will be gone in a week. Impermanence infuses life with value, with urgency, with beauty. There is a beautiful analogy that can help us grasp this. Think of a wave on the ocean. It rises from the great body of water, travels for a time, and then merges back into it. Now, if the wave believes it is a separate, independent entity, it will live in constant terror. It will fear other waves crashing into them. It will fear the shore. And most of all, it will fear its own end, the moment it dissolves. But what if the wave realized the truth? What if it realized, I am not just a wave. I am the ocean. My nature is water. Rising and falling is simply what water does. With that realization, all fear would vanish. The wave could enjoy its journey, the feeling of the sun and the wind, the dance with other waves, knowing that its true nature is vast, deep, and eternal. It was never separate to begin with. We are like that wave. We identify with this temporary form, this body, this personality, and we live in fear of its dissolution. The wisdom of Anika is the realization that our true nature is not the temporary wave, but the entire ocean of life. This is why it is so crucial to distinguish between the fact of impermanence and our feeling about it. The fact is neutral. Change is not inherently good or bad. It is simply the way things are. Our suffering is created entirely by our reaction to this neutral fact. We overlay our judgments onto reality. We label changes as good if they align with our desires, and bad if they do not. When we get a promotion, we call it a good change. When we lose a job, we call it a bad change. But both are simply change. Both are temporary states. By clinging to the good and resisting the bad, we create a constant inner battle, a state of perpetual friction with the flow of life. The path to peace does not lie in trying to control the flow. That is impossible. It lies in changing our relationship to the flow. It is about cultivating the wisdom to see the ever-changing nature of things without judgment, the courage to let go of our desperate grip, and the grace to move in harmony with the current. It is learning to surf the waves of life, rather than being crushed by them. So, let the truth of Anika settle into you. Feel it in the rhythm of your breath. See it in the passing clouds. Acknowledge it in the growth of your children, the aging of your parents, the evolution of your own thoughts and feelings. Do not turn away from it. Do not label it as sad or frightening. Simply see it for what it is, the dynamic, creative, intelligent pulse of the universe. It is the law that allows everything to be. We have now seen this universal law painted across the canvas of the cosmos and etched into our very bones. But where does this law feel most immediate, most personal, most turbulent? It is in the inner world of our own minds. Let us now turn our gaze inward to observe the fleeting, insubstantial, and ghost-like nature of our own thoughts and emotions. We have stood on the shore of the cosmos and witnessed the universal truth of Anika, the law of impermanence. We have seen it in the slow dance of the stars and felt it in the constant renewal of our own bodies. Now, we must journey into the most intimate and often the most turbulent landscape of all, the inner world of our own mind. For it is here, in the realm of our thoughts and emotions, that the river of change flows fastest. It is here that our resistance is most fierce, and it is here that the possibility for profound freedom is most immediate. Think of your mind not as a thing, but as a space. Imagine it as a vast, open sky. It has no color, no shape, and no boundary. It is pure, open, aware potential. And through this sky, phenomena constantly pass. These are your thoughts and emotions. They are the weather of your mind. For most of us, we do not experience our minds this way. We do not see ourselves as the sky. We believe we are the weather. When a dark cloud of sadness appears, we say, "I am sad." When a flash of lightning like anger strikes, we say, "I am angry." We become so identified with the passing weather that we forget the vast, clear sky that is our true nature. Let us first look at the nature of thoughts. Where do they come from? Sit for just a moment and try to predict your very next thought. It is impossible. A thought simply appears, as if from nowhere. It might be a memory from childhood, a worry about an upcoming meeting, a line from a song, a judgment about the temperature in the room. They bubble up from the depths of consciousness, uninvited and unannounced. They are like clouds drifting across the sky. Some are light and wispy, barely noticed. Others are heavy and dark, casting a shadow over everything. We spend so much of our lives believing that we are the thinker of our thoughts, the one who is in control. But the reality is that, for the most part, we are the witness to a continuous stream of mental events. The problem is not the thoughts themselves. The sky is not harmed by the clouds. The problem is our relationship to them. We grab onto the pleasant thoughts, the daydreams of success or love, and we try to hold them. We replay them, savor them, and then feel a sense of loss when they inevitably dissolve. This is like trying to catch a cloud in a net. The struggle is futile and creates a subtle tension. More often, we fixate on the difficult thoughts. A worry about the future appears, and instead of letting it drift by, we grab it. We feed it, analyze it, argue with it, and spin it into elaborate stories of potential disaster. We take a single, dark cloud and, through the power of our obsessive attention, we build it into a hurricane. We believe that by thinking about a problem endlessly, we are solving it. But more often than not, we are simply amplifying it, giving a fleeting mental event a power and a permanence that it does not inherently possess. A thought is insubstantial. It is a ghost. It only has the power that we give to it through our belief and our attention. The same is true for our emotions. Emotions are like the wind and the rain. They are energetic events that move through the body. An emotion has a natural life cycle. Think of a moment of sudden joy or surprise. There is an initial spark, a rising energy that swells to a peak, and then, if left alone, it naturally subsides and fades away. The same is true for difficult emotions. A wave of anger or sadness arises in response to a trigger. It builds in intensity, crests, and then, its energy spent, it dissolves. This is the natural, intelligent flow of our emotional life. But again, we interfere. When a wave of joy comes, we cling to it. We think, this is it. This is happiness. I need to feel this way forever. This very act of clinging introduces fear into the experience, the fear that it will end. And so, the pure joy becomes tainted with the anxiety of its own passing. We cannot simply enjoy the warmth of the sun because we are already worrying about the sunset. When a difficult emotion like sadness or fear arises, our reaction is even more violent. We resist it. We think, I shouldn't be feeling this. This is wrong. I need to get rid of it. So we suppress it, pushing it down into the dark basement of the mind. Or we distract ourselves with work, entertainment, food, or drink, anything to avoid feeling the wave. Or we fight it, berating ourselves for feeling anxious or weak. All of this resistance is like building a dam in a river. It does not stop the water. It simply causes the pressure to build and build until the emotion, which might have been a brief passing shower, becomes a stagnant, murky flood that poisons our entire inner landscape. We keep ourselves trapped in old emotions for weeks, months, or even years, not because they are so powerful, but because we continually refuse to let them complete their natural journey through us. So, what is the alternative? The alternative is not to have a mind empty of thoughts and emotions. That is the mind of a stone, not a human being. The alternative is to change our position. It is the art of learning to be the sky. This is the practice of mindfulness, of pure observation. It is the simple, yet radical, act of stepping back and watching the weather of the mind without getting swept away by it. You can do it right now. Simply notice the sensation of your breath. Then, when a thought appears, as it surely will, see if you can notice it without judgment. You don't have to label it good or bad. You don't have to follow it. Simply acknowledge its presence, as you would acknowledge a cloud passing overhead. Ah, there is a thought of worry. There is a memory. There is a judgment. And then, gently, return your attention to your breath. By doing this, you create a space between the awareness, which is you, and the mental event, which is the thought or emotion. In this space lies all your freedom. You begin to realize that you are not the anger. You are the one who is aware of the anger. You are not the anxiety. You are the one who notices the feeling of anxiety in the body. This realization is profoundly liberating. It leads us to a crucial shift in the very language we use to describe our experience, a shift that can change everything. We are conditioned to say, I am sad. This is a statement of identity. It is a declaration that the entirety of your being has been reduced to this one temporary emotional state. When you say I am sad, there is no room for anything else. You have become the storm cloud. But what if, instead, you were to say, a feeling of sadness is here. Can you feel the difference? The second statement is a statement of observation. It acknowledges that sadness is present, but it does not equate you with the sadness. You are the space in which the sadness is happening. You are the sky, and the sadness is a passing cloud. This simple shift from I am to I feel or I notice is the difference between being a prisoner of your emotions and being a wise and compassionate host to them. There is a famous Zen story that illustrates this perfectly. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were traveling together. They came to a river where the ford was flooded with muddy water. A young and beautiful woman in fine clothes stood there, unable to cross. Without hesitation, the senior monk walked over, picked her up in his arms, carried her across the river, and set her down on the other side. He then continued on his way. The junior monk was scandalized. He followed his master for hours, his mind in turmoil. How could he do that? He thought. We monks are forbidden to touch a woman. It is a serious violation of our precepts. He is supposed to be a master, a model of purity. His mind was a storm of judgment, anger, and confusion. Finally, unable to bear it any longer, he blurted out, "Master, how could you do that? You broke our sacred vows by touching that woman." The senior monk looked at him calmly and replied, "I left the woman by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story is a perfect map of the inner world. The senior monk engaged with reality as it was. An action was needed, he performed it, and then he let it go. The event was over. For him, it was a cloud that had already passed and left the sky clear. The junior monk, however, clung to the event. He did not cling to the woman herself, but to his thoughts about her, his judgments about the situation, and the angry, self-righteous emotions these thoughts generated. He was carrying a ghost in his mind, and it was weighing him down, poisoning his peace for hours. We all do this. We carry our ghosts. We carry yesterday's arguments, last week's anxieties, and last year's resentments. The original events are long gone, as transient as the woman by the river, but we keep them alive in our minds through our compulsive thinking and our refusal to let the weather just be weather. Our freedom, then, is not found by trying to create a permanently sunny day in our minds. It is found in becoming a better host, a more spacious and accepting sky. It is the willingness to allow the clouds of thought and the storms of emotion to arise, to exist, and to pass away, without identifying with them and without resisting them. It is to know, in your very bones, that you are the silent, witnessing presence behind it all, untouched and unharmed. We have explored the transient nature of the world within. Now, with this understanding of how to be with our inner flow, let us turn our gaze outward once more. Let us look at the world of physical objects that we believe we own. The world of possessions that promises security but so often delivers a subtle and heavy form of bondage. Having turned our gaze inward to witness the ceaseless flow of thoughts and emotions, we now bring that same awareness back to the world outside. We turn to the things we gather around us, the objects we use to build our lives and define our identities. We look at our homes, our cars, our clothes, our collections, the physical evidence of our existence. And here, in this realm of the tangible, the illusion of permanence takes on its most seductive and solid form. We believe that what we can hold in our hands, we can truly own. But this belief is a subtle trap, a form of bondage we willingly enter, mistaking a temporary shelter for a permanent home. The truth is, when it comes to our possessions, we are not owners. We are simply tenants. Look around you now, at the space you inhabit. Perhaps you see a favorite chair, a treasured book, a useful computer. Consider one of these objects that you call mine. Let us gently investigate this idea of ownership. Where did this object come from? Its raw materials were drawn from the earth, perhaps wood from a forest that stood for a century, or metals forged in the heart of the planet over millennia. Countless hands and minds were involved in its design, manufacture, and transport before it ever came to you. You are simply one link in a vast, intricate chain of causality. And where will it go when you are done with it? It may be sold, given away, thrown into a landfill where it will slowly decompose back into the earth. Or perhaps it will be treasured by another, who will also call it mine for a short while. Your period of so-called ownership is but a brief moment in the immense lifespan of the atoms that constitute that object. You are not its master. You are its temporary steward, a caretaker for one small portion of its journey through time. To see this is not to devalue the object, but to see it more clearly, to release it from the heavy burden of our ego. We are living in a rented house, furnished with rented furniture. The wise tenant cares for the house, enjoys its comfort and shelter, but never forgets that it is not, and never was, truly theirs. This illusion of ownership comes at a tremendous psychological cost. Consumer culture is built upon a single, foundational promise: that the acquisition of things will bring lasting happiness. We are told that if we just buy this car, wear these clothes, or own this home, we will finally feel complete, secure, and content. And for a moment, it seems to work. The act of buying something new provides a fleeting thrill, a little spike of pleasure. But what happens after that initial high fades? The promise dissolves, and the burdens of ownership begin. First comes the burden of maintenance. The new car requires insurance, fuel, and repairs. The beautiful house requires cleaning, yard work, and a new roof. Our possessions, which were meant to serve us, now demand our time, our energy, and our money. We become their servants. Then comes the more insidious burden, the fear of loss. The very moment you declare something mine, the seed of anxiety is planted. You worry about it being stolen, broken, or lost. The more you value the object, the more intense the fear of its absence becomes. This low-level, chronic anxiety is the shadow that follows every prized possession. Finally, there is the inevitable burden of disappointment. The object that was once new and exciting becomes old and familiar. The technology becomes obsolete. The fashion goes out of style. It gets scratched. It fades. It breaks. Its inherent impermanence, its anicca, reveals itself. And because we have built our hopes for happiness upon it, its decay becomes a source of our own dissatisfaction. The promise of materialism is a lie. It offers a permanent solution in a world where nothing is permanent. This cycle of desire, acquisition, fleeting pleasure, and renewed desire is known as the hedonic treadmill. Imagine walking on a treadmill. You walk and walk, but you remain in the same place. This is the nature of seeking happiness through material gain. Our mind has a baseline level of contentment. A new purchase might temporarily raise that level, but our minds are incredibly quick to adapt. The new car or the bigger house quickly becomes the new normal. Your baseline of happiness settles back to where it was before. But now, you require a higher level of material wealth just to feel the same. To get that same thrill of acquisition again, you need something even better, more expensive, more novel. It is an unwinnable race, a game designed to keep you perpetually dissatisfied, always striving for the next thing just over the horizon. Modern advertising is the engine of this treadmill. Its entire purpose is to make you feel that what you have is not enough, that you are incomplete without this new product. It manufactures discontent as its primary commodity. To step off this treadmill is a radical act of rebellion. It is to declare that your inner peace is not for sale. The way off the treadmill is not through enforced poverty or a grim rejection of all material comfort. It is through the cultivation of a different kind of wealth, an inner wealth. It is the simple, profound realization that true freedom comes not from having more, but from needing less. When your happiness is not dependent on external objects, it cannot be easily taken from you. You become resilient. You are no longer a puppet of market forces and changing trends. Your sense of self-worth is not tied to your net worth. You find richness in things that cannot be bought or sold. A walk in nature, a deep conversation with a friend, the joy of learning, the silence of a quiet morning. You begin to value experiences over objects. An experience, once had, becomes a part of you. It cannot be stolen or broken. It is integrated into the fabric of your being. A possession, on the other hand, remains forever separate, a constant source of external worry. There is a story of a Zen master who had a beautiful, antique teacup. He treasured it. One day, a student asked him why he handled it with such care. The master replied, "I treat this cup as if it were already broken." By this, he meant that he was in a constant, gentle awareness of the cup's fragile, impermanent nature. He did not live in denial of the fact that one day it would inevitably break. Because he had already accepted this truth, he was free to enjoy its beauty completely in the present moment, without the fear of its future loss. And when the day comes that it does break, he will not be overcome with shock and anger. He will simply say, "Of course." This is the art of using our possessions wisely to enjoy them, to care for them, but to hold them lightly in our minds, as if they were already gone. Another Zen master, Ryokan, lived a life of profound simplicity in a small hut at the foot of a mountain. One evening, he returned to find that a thief had broken in. The thief had searched the entire hut, but, finding nothing of value to steal, had left empty-handed. Ryokan sat down and looked out his window at the brilliant full moon. He wrote a short poem. "The thief left it behind the moon at my window. In this simple line lies a world of wisdom." Ryokan's first thought was not anger at being robbed, but a kind of compassion for the thief. The thief was so trapped in the world of material objects that he could not see the real treasure that was freely available to all: the beauty of the moon. Ryokan's wealth was not in things that could be taken, but in his capacity to experience the present moment. His peace was unshakable because it was not built on anything that could be lost. He was truly free. This is the freedom that becomes available to us when we see through the illusion of ownership. We can begin to relate to our possessions in a new way. We can feel gratitude for the shelter and comfort they provide without being enslaved by them. We can care for them properly, as a good tenant cares for a rented house, without clinging to them as a source of identity. We can enjoy them fully, knowing they are temporary, like the master enjoying his teacup. We can learn to find our true wealth, not in what fills our homes, but in the peace that fills our hearts. A peace that, like the moon at the window, cannot be stolen. We have seen the illusion of permanence in our possessions, but there is a form of possession that we cling to even more fiercely, one that is far more subtle and emotionally charged. We will now turn our attention from the things we own to the people we love, and explore the profound challenge and beauty of impermanence in our relationships. Having seen the transient nature of the world within us and the things around us, we now arrive at the most intimate and charged territory of human experience: our relationships. All the habits of clinging we have observed, the grasping at pleasant thoughts, the desperate ownership of material objects become magnified 1,000 times when we apply them to other people. Here, our desire for permanence clashes most violently with the ceaseless flow of life. We seek in the arms of another an unshakable refuge from the storm of uncertainty, a solid rock in the river of change. But other people are not rocks. They, like us, are rivers. And to love a river, you cannot try to build a dam. You must learn to love its flowing. Think of a person you love, a partner, a parent, a child, a dear friend. Who are they? Your mind will likely conjure a static image, a collection of memories, personality traits, and familiar habits. We create this mental snapshot of the person, a kind of internal statue, and this is what we fall in love with. We cherish this statue, we polish it, we place it on a pedestal in our minds, and we expect the living, breathing person to conform to it forever. This is the source of immeasurable conflict and disappointment. When our partner develops a new interest that we don't share, when our child develops values different from our own, when our friend goes through a difficult period and is no longer the cheerful companion they once were, we feel a sense of unease, of betrayal. You've changed, we might say, with an undertone of accusation. The accusation is not really aimed at them. It is the cry of our own clinging mind, protesting that the living, flowing river of that person has refused to be the cold, dead statue we created for them. To truly love another is to have the courage to break that statue every single day, and to meet the real person who stands before you in all their fluid, unpredictable, and ever-evolving glory. This points to a profound redefinition of love itself. The conventional model of love, so often celebrated in our stories and songs, is a model of possession. It speaks the language of mine. You are my everything. I cannot live without you. While this may sound romantic, beneath the surface lies the grammar of grasping. This love is conditional. It says, I will love you as long as you continue to be the person I need you to be, as long as you make me feel secure, as long as you don't change in ways that inconvenience me. This love is rooted in fear, the fear of being alone, the fear of not being enough. It leads inevitably to jealousy, control, and a constant, exhausting effort to manage the other person, to keep the river within its banks. But there is another way to love, a way that is informed by the wisdom of impermanence. This is a love based not on possession, but on profound appreciation. It is the ability to sit on the bank of another person's river and to watch its flow with wonder and respect, without needing to control its course. It is a love that says, I am so grateful to have my journey run alongside yours for this precious time. I will not try to own you, for you belong only to yourself. I will not try to fix you, for you are not broken. I will simply be present with you, and I will honor the mystery of your becoming. This kind of love is a radical act of generosity. It grants the other the greatest gift we can offer, the freedom to be themselves. And in doing so, it grants us a gift in return. Freedom from the anxious, tiring work of control, and freedom from the fear of loss that always haunts a love based on ownership. Every relationship is a temporary convergence of paths. Imagine two streams originating from different parts of a mountain, each with its own unique journey. For a time, they may merge and flow together as a single river, sharing the same water, carving the same canyon. This period of confluence is beautiful, powerful, and nourishing. But the landscape of life is always shifting. Further downstream, the river may come to a place where it naturally splits again, each stream now continuing on its own separate, but equally valid, path toward the great ocean. Our relationships are like this. We meet, we connect. Our lives merge for a season, be it for a few months or for 50 years. To take this period of shared journey for granted is to be blind to the miracle of it. To demand that it never change, that the river never split, is to make war with reality itself. The agony of a separation, whether from a breakup or a disagreement, is often compounded by this hidden layer of resistance. We are not only grieving the loss of the person's presence, we are raging against the universe for breaking our unspoken contract of forever. When we can see that forever was never part of the deal, the grief can be purified. The sadness of parting remains, for that is the natural human heart's response to loss. But the bitterness, the shock, the sense of personal injustice can begin to dissolve. We can learn to be grateful for the time the rivers flowed together, rather than resentful for the place where they diverged. This is perhaps the most difficult wisdom to apply when we face the ultimate separation, the death of a loved one. Here, the pain seems absolute, the loss final. In these moments, the abstract philosophy of impermanence can feel cold and distant. There is a story from the life of the Buddha that addresses this with extraordinary compassion. A young woman named Kisa Gotami had an infant son, and he died. Overcome with a grief so immense that it drove her to madness, she refused to believe he was gone. She clutched the tiny, lifeless body to her chest and went from house to house in her village, begging for medicine that could restore him. Some people mocked her, others pitied her, but no one could help. Finally, someone advised her to seek out the Buddha. She ran to him, laid her son at his feet, and pleaded for the magic cure. The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion. He did not dismiss her pain or lecture her on attachment. He met her where she was. "There is only one way to cure your son," he said gently. "You must go back into the village and bring me a single mustard seed. But it must be from a house where no one, not a parent, not a child, not a spouse, not a servantas, ever died." Hope surged in Kisa Gotami's heart. A mustard seed was such a simple thing. She began her quest immediately. At the first house, a kind woman said, "Of course, I have mustard seeds." But when Kisa Gotami asked, "Has anyone in your family ever died?" the woman's face fell. "The living are few," she replied, "but the dead are many. We lost my father just last year." Kisa Gotami went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was the same everywhere. Every family had mustard seeds, but every family had also known loss. With each conversation, a profound shift began to happen within her. Her focus moved from her own singular, unbearable pain to the shared, universal experience of sorrow. She realized that death was not a unique monster that had attacked only her family. It was a universal current in the river of life, touching every single home. Her heart, once contracted in on itself with grief, began to expand with a deep, sorrowful empathy for all humanity. By the time she returned to the Buddha, she had no mustard seed, but she had found the beginning of peace. She had accepted the first noble truth of existence. Life is marked by loss. The Buddha's teaching was not to erase Kisa Gotami's grief, but to place it in its proper context. He helped her see that her love for her son and the pain of his loss connected her to everyone who has ever lived and loved. By understanding the universal law of impermanence, her suffering was transformed from an isolating agony into a compassionate connection. This wisdom has a powerful application in our daily lives. When we fully internalize the truth that all our relationships are temporary, We stop taking them for granted. The illusion of permanence is what allows us to be complacent, to put off the kind word, to hold on to the petty grudge. How would you interact with your loved ones today if you were deeply, tenderly aware that this day, this conversation, this shared meal might be the last? You would listen with your whole being. You would forgive minor transgressions instantly. You would speak your words of appreciation and love without hesitation. The awareness of impermanence does not make love morbid. It makes it alive, vibrant, and incredibly precious. It is the secret spice that awakens us from the slumber of complacency and allows us to love with the full intensity of a grateful heart. To love in this way is to hold another's heart in your hands, as you would a small bird. You cherish it, you protect it, but you hold it lightly enough so that it is always free to fly away. It is to learn the dance of intimacy and freedom, of connection and release. It is to be thankful for the season that you are given, and to have the grace and wisdom to bless the changing of the seasons when it comes. This is a braver, a kinder, and ultimately, a more peaceful way to love. We have now applied the lens of impermanence to our inner world, our possessions, and our relationships with others. The journey now leads us to the most fundamental relationship of all, the one we have with the physical form we call our own. We must turn to face the undeniable transience of our own body. Having explored the flowing, transient nature of our relationships with others, our journey now turns inward to its final, most intimate destination. We arrive at the very ground of our physical being, the one constant companion we have from the moment of our birth to the moment of our death, the human body. Of all the things we cling to, this is the most fundamental. It is the object of our greatest vanities and our deepest fears. We treat it as a possession, a fortress to be defended, a statue to be perfected. We invest it with the entirety of our identity, believing its sensations, its appearance, and its fate to be the absolute truth of who we are. But the wisdom of impermanence invites us to a more liberating and ultimately more truthful perspective. It asks us to see the body not as a solid entity that we own, but as a sacred, temporary vessel. It asks us to relate to this body not as a master to a slave, but as a grateful guest staying for a short while in a remarkable, borrowed home. Our most persistent illusion about the body is its solidity. We feel its weight, we see its distinct form in the mirror, and we conclude that it is a stable, self-contained object. But modern science and ancient contemplation both reveal a radically different reality. The body is not a noun, it is a verb. It is a continuous, dynamic process of change, a whirlwind of activity disguised as a solid form. Every second of every day, within this form you call your own, an estimated 30 million of your cells die, and an equal number are born to take their place. You are a standing wave, a stable pattern through which the universe is constantly flowing. The food you ate this morning is right now being transformed into energy, tissue, and heat. The air you are breathing in this very moment is offering up its oxygen to be carried by your blood to every extremity, becoming a part of you, while the carbon dioxide you exhale was, just moments ago, an integral component of your being. You are not a closed system. You are an open border, in constant, seamless exchange with the world around you. The water that makes up over half your body weight was once in the clouds, the rivers, the oceans. The calcium in your bones and the iron in your blood were forged in the hearts of long-dead stars. To say this is my body is to make a profound, though understandable mistake. It is like a wave in the ocean declaring, "This is my water." The ancient teachings of the Buddha offer a powerful practice to dissolve this illusion of a solid, separate self. It is the contemplation of the body in terms of the four great elements. It is an invitation to see the body not as a unified me, but as a temporary assembly of universal properties. First, contemplate the earth element within you. Feel the solidity and resistance in your bones, the toughness of your teeth, the texture of your hair and nails, the substance of your muscles and organs. Recognize that all of this solidity is borrowed from the planet. It is the dust of the continents, the minerals of the soil, temporarily gathered and shaped into this form. When this body's journey is over, all this solidity will return to the earth from which it came. You are a walking, breathing piece of the planet. Next, contemplate the water element. Feel the fluidity within you. Sense the blood flowing through your veins, the saliva in your mouth, the synovial fluid that lubricates your joints, the tears that can well in your eyes. This is the element of cohesion, of binding. Recognize that all this fluid is borrowed from the great waters of the world. It is the rain, the rivers, the oceans, temporarily cycling through this form. You are a walking, breathing vessel of the world's water. Then, contemplate the fire element. Feel the warmth of your own skin. This is the element of temperature and energy. It is the metabolic fire that digests your food, converting it into life. It is the heat that keeps you alive, the energy that powers every thought and every movement. Recognize that this fire, this warmth, is borrowed from the sun, the ultimate source of energy for our world. You are a walking, breathing vessel of starlight. Finally, contemplate the wind element. Feel the breath moving in and out of your lungs. This is the element of motion and vibration. It is the air that fills the empty spaces, the movement of gases through your system, the electrical impulses that flash along your nerves, carrying messages from brain to body and back again. Recognize that this motion, this breath, is borrowed from the great atmosphere of the planet. It is the same air that rustles the leaves on the trees and travels across continents. You are a walking, breathing part of the sky. When you see the body in this way as a temporary confluence of earth, water, fire, and air, the fierce, anxious grip of mind begins to loosen. You see that the body is not a possession, but a manifestation. It is not a separate entity fighting against the universe, but the universe itself, momentarily expressing itself as you. There is nothing in this body you can truly own, for it is all on loan from the cosmos, a gift to be stewarded for a short and precious time. And yet, despite this profound truth, our culture teaches us the opposite. It teaches us to fixate on the most superficial aspect of the body, its appearance. We are relentlessly conditioned to wage a war against the body's natural processes, a war we are destined to lose, and a war that causes immense suffering. This is the tyranny of the mirror. We are bombarded with images of a very specific, narrow, and youthful ideal of beauty, and we are told that our worth, our happiness, and our lovability depend on conforming to this ideal. An entire global economy, worth trillions of dollars, is built upon the fear of our own natural unfolding. The anti-aging creams, the cosmetic surgeries, the hair dyes, the fad diets, they are all weapons sold to us to fight a war against time. This war is unwinnable, and the psychological cost is devastating. We live with a constant, low-grade anxiety about our appearance. We scrutinize ourselves in the mirror, cataloging our perceived flaws. The first wrinkle, the new gray hair, the skin that is not as firm as it once was. We compare ourselves endlessly to others and to digitally altered images of celebrities, and we always come up short. This creates a prison of self-consciousness, a neurotic obsession with the surface of things. For many, especially as they age, this leads to a feeling of becoming invisible, of losing value in a society that worships the perishable bloom of youth. The wisdom of impermanence offers a radical escape from this prison. It invites us to shift our values. What if we were to see the aging process not as a decay, but as a ripening? What if we saw the lines on our face not as flaws, but as a beautiful and intricate map of a life lived, a testament to all the laughter and tears, all the wonder and worry we have experienced? What if we saw our graying hair not as a sign of fading, but as a crown of wisdom, a mark of having navigated the complexities of life for many seasons? This perspective moves us from valuing the body for its fleeting ornamental qualities to cherishing it for its incredible functionality and for the precious life it has enabled us to live. This body has allowed you to see sunsets, to taste food, to hug a loved one, to walk in a forest, to read a book, to learn, to grow. To be grateful for these experiences is to love the body for what it does, not just for how it looks. This is a love that deepens with time, rather than fading. Inevitably, the body's impermanence makes itself known in ways we cannot ignore. It comes in the form of illness and pain. In our culture, we often treat illness as a kind of personal failure. We think, what did I do wrong to deserve this? We add layers of guilt, shame, and anger on top of the raw physical discomfort. We see health as the norm and illness as an enemy to be vanquished. But from a contemplative perspective, illness and pain can be our most profound, if unwelcome, teachers. Good health allows us to live in a state of blissful ignorance about the body's fragility. We take it for granted. Illness shatters this illusion. It forces us into an intimate, moment-to-moment relationship with the reality of our physical vulnerability. It reminds us, in no uncertain terms, that we are not in control. There is a mindful way to work with physical pain. The usual response is to resist it, to tense around it, to create a story about it. This is terrible. It's never going to end. I can't stand it. This mental resistance is what turns pain into suffering. The mindful approach is to do the opposite. It is to bring a gentle, non-judgmental curiosity to the physical sensation itself. Instead of pushing it away, can you soften around the edges? Can you investigate it? Where, precisely, is it located? Does it have a fixed center, or does it move? Is the sensation sharp, or dull, or throbbing, or hot, or cold? Does it remain constant, or does it change in intensity from moment to moment? By engaging in this gentle, fearless investigation, you begin to deconstruct the experience. You separate the raw, fluctuating physical sensation from the solid, rigid mental story of my pain. You realize that the sensation itself is just another display of impermanence, a river of energy flowing through you. This practice does not necessarily eliminate the pain, but it can dramatically reduce the suffering associated with it. Furthermore, the experience of illness can be a powerful gateway to gratitude. When your back hurts, you suddenly appreciate with all your heart the thousands of days it carried you without complaint. When you have a cold and cannot breathe easily, you are filled with awe for the simple, miraculous gift of a clear breath. The wisdom lies in not waiting for illness to teach us this. Can we, right now, feel a sense of profound gratitude for the simple miracle of this body's functioning? Gratitude for the heart that has been beating faithfully, without a single conscious command from you, since before you were born. Gratitude for the lungs that draw in the air of the world. Gratitude for the legs that carry you. Gratitude for the five senses that act as gateways to all the beauty and wonder of existence. This leads us to a new and healthier relationship with our physical form. We can see the body as a precious guest house, and our consciousness as the guest residing within it for a short time. How does a wise person treat a guest house they are staying in? They don't worship it or identify with it, but they treat it with respect and care. They keep it clean. They repair what is broken. They ensure it is a healthy and pleasant place to live. This is the model for wise stewardship of the body. We can engage in healthy practices, good nutrition, exercise, adequate rest, not out of a fearful obsession with preserving our youth or cheating death, but out of a loving gratitude for this vehicle. The motivation shifts from fear to appreciation. The energy shifts from neurotic striving to gentle, compassionate care. You are not fighting a war against your body. You are entering into a loving partnership with it. The final act of this wise stewardship, the ultimate expression of our understanding of impermanence, is the graceful acceptance of the body's eventual and inevitable dissolution. It is the willingness to let go. Just as we entered this world with nothing, we will leave it with nothing. This body, this temporary collection of earth, water, fire, and air, will return to its constituent elements. To contemplate this without fear is the culmination of our practice. It is to know so deeply that you are not this body that you can allow it to follow its natural course without terror. You can be grateful for the shelter it provided, for the experiences it made possible, and then, when the time comes, you can let it go. This ultimate act of letting go of the body naturally brings us to the most profound question of all. If I am not my thoughts, if I am not my emotions, if I am not my possessions, my relationships, or even this physical body, then who or what am I? This question leads us directly to the heart of the mystery, to the exploration of the elusive concept we call the self. Having journeyed through the impermanence of our inner world, our possessions, our relationships, and even the very flesh and bone of our physical form, we arrive at the heart of the mystery. We stand before the central question that has haunted philosophers and seekers for millennia. If I am not any of these changing things, then who or what am I? We are searching for the occupant of the guest house, the driver of the vehicle, the constant, unchanging entity at the center of our experience that we call I, me, or the self. We instinctively feel that there must be a permanent chief executive in the headquarters of our mind, a stable thinker behind the thoughts, an enduring feeler behind the feelings. The most profound and radical insight of Buddhist wisdom, a concept called anatta, or no self, asks us to question this fundamental assumption. It is not a denial of our existence, but a deep, honest, and liberating investigation into the true nature of that existence. Let us begin this investigation together, not with abstract philosophy, but with direct inquiry. Let us go in search of this solid, continuous, independent self. Where does it reside? The most obvious candidate is the body. But as we have seen, the body is a constantly changing river of material elements, a temporary assembly of borrowed stardust. If the self were the body, it would be a different self every second, every day, every year. So, the unchanging self cannot be found in the body. Perhaps, then, the self is our feelings. But our emotional life is like the weather, in a state of perpetual flux. One moment there is joy, the next, boredom, then irritation, then peace, then sadness. If the self were our feelings, it would be a hopelessly fickle and unreliable entity, dissolving and reforming from moment to moment. A stable, singular self cannot be found in the fleeting climate of our emotions. Well, what about our thoughts, or our memories? Surely, the self is the thinker, the one who remembers. But look at your thoughts. They are like clouds, appearing from an unknown origin and disappearing into an unknown destination. They are often chaotic, contradictory, and unbidden, and memories are notoriously unreliable, fading and shifting over time, more like creative reconstructions than accurate records. The mental chatter of the mind is a process, not a permanent entity. A solid self cannot be found in the phantom-like stream of our thoughts. Maybe the self is our role in the world, our profession, our identity. I am a teacher. I am an American. I am a parent. These are useful conventions, but are they who we truly are? The teacher retires. The parent's children grow up and leave. Our national or political allegiances may change. These are temporary costumes we wear on the stage of life. When the costume is removed, is the self gone? To number? The self cannot be a temporary job description or a label. So where is it? Where is this independent commander, this central core? The astonishing conclusion that arises from this honest investigation is that when we look for a permanent, independent, unchanging self, it cannot be found. What we find instead is a collection of interconnected, interdependent, and constantly changing processes. We find body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and a stream of moment-to-moment consciousness, all flowing together, all influencing each other, like a dynamic, self-organizing ecosystem. We have been assuming there is a ghost in the machine, but upon inspection, we find only the intricate, beautiful, and ever-changing workings of the machine itself. There is a famous ancient text that perfectly illustrates this with a brilliant analogy. It records a dialogue between a Buddhist sage named Nagasena and a Greek king, Melinda. The king, a man of sharp intellect, wanted to challenge the teaching of no self. He asked Nagasena, "Who are you?" Nagasena replied that he was known as Nagasena, but this was merely a convenient name, a designation, and that no permanent individual Nagasena could be found. The king, amused, gestured to the magnificent chariot that had brought him. He asked, "Is this chariot the wheels?" Nagasena said no. "Is it the axle?" Number. "Is it the frame, the yoke, the reins?" To each question, Nagasena replied, "Number." The king then asked, "Is the chariot something separate from all these parts?" Again, Nagasena said no. With a triumphant smile, the king declared, "Then, venerable sir, you are lying. There is no chariot." Nagasena remained calm. He turned the question back to the king. "Your Majesty, how did you arrive here?" "In a chariot," the king replied. Nagasena then said, "You have just declared there is no chariot. If so, what did you arrive in?" He then explained that chariot is simply a conventional name, a concept we apply to the functional assembly of the wheels, the axle, the frame, and all the other parts. The chariot has no separate, inherent existence apart from its components. When the parts are assembled and function in a certain way, we find it useful to give this process the name chariot. The parallel, Nagasena explained, is exact. The being you call King Melinda, or the one called Nagasena, is like the chariot. It is a convenient name given to the assembly of the body, feelings, perceptions, thoughts, and consciousness. The word self is a useful pronoun for navigating the world, but we have made the mistake of believing this pronoun refers to a permanent, independent soul, when it is really just a label for an ever-changing process. It is crucial to understand what this teaching of anatta is not. It is not a declaration that you do not exist. That would be nihilism. You are clearly sitting here, reading, thinking, breathing. Actions have consequences. There is a continuity from one moment to the next. The person who went to sleep last night is, conventionally, the same person who woke up this morning. Anatta does not deny this functional, conventional reality. It denies that within this continuity there is an unchanging, singular, immortal essence. There is a story, but there is no permanent, separate author behind it. The story is writing itself, moment by moment. Nor is this teaching an instruction to become a cold, passionless robot. In fact, the opposite is true. Much of our emotional life is spent defending, promoting, and worrying about our constructed ego. When we see through this construction, we are free to experience the world with more spontaneity, joy, and open-heartedness. So why is this realization considered so liberating? Because the vast majority of our human suffering is self-inflicted, and more specifically, it is inflicted on the self. Think about it. When you feel insulted, what is it that has been hurt? Not your physical body, but your idea of yourself, your ego. When you feel the shame of failure, what is it that has failed? It is the story you tell about yourself as a successful person. When you feel envy, it is because your constructed self feels diminished in comparison to another's, degradus. The fear of death is the ultimate fear of the annihilation of this self. Criticism, shame, anxiety, jealousy, pride, all these afflictions are arrows aimed at a target, the ego. The wisdom of no self reveals that this target is, and always has been, an illusion. The arrows still fly, but they pass through empty space. They have nothing to hit. The sting of life's difficulties is lessened exponentially when there is no solid me at the center to take it all so personally. Furthermore, seeing through the illusion of a separate self is the key that unlocks boundless compassion. As long as we believe in a solid me here and a solid you there, the world is fundamentally divided. It is a world of us versus them, of competition and comparison. But when you look deeply and see that you are an ever-changing process of body and mind, and you look at another and see that they, too, are an ever-changing process of body and mind, the hard line between self and other begins to dissolve. We are all interconnected waves in the same ocean, arising from the same conditions. Your joy is not entirely separate from my joy. Your suffering is not entirely separate from my suffering. This realization is the natural ground for empathy, kindness, and a deep sense of shared humanity. Ultimately, the clinging to a self is an exhausting, full-time job. It is the job of a security guard, constantly patrolling the borders of the ego, checking credentials, defending against threats, and polishing the public image. It is a role defined by tension and fear. To see that there is no fixed self to protect is to be able to finally resign from this impossible job. It is a profound exhalation, a letting go of a burden you may not have even been aware you were carrying. You can finally relax, stop defending, and simply participate in the magnificent, selfless dance of existence. You are not the lonely statue in the museum. You are the entire, flowing dance itself. Having seen the illusory nature of the self we try so desperately to build, let us now examine the primary tools we use in this futile construction project. The concepts of success and failure, and the endless pursuit of status in the eyes of the world. Having seen through the illusion of a solid, separate self, we are now in a position to examine the very tools we use to construct and decorate this phantom ego. We build it with the bricks of success, and we live in mortal fear of the wrecking ball of failure. In our modern world, these two concepts are not just outcomes, they are verdicts. They are treated as the final, definitive measure of a human life. Success is a state of grace. Failure is a state of damnation. We internalize this judgment so deeply that our inner peace rises and falls with every victory and every defeat, leaving us in a constant state of emotional volatility. But the wisdom of impermanence reveals success and failure for what they truly are. Not permanent realities, but fleeting labels, temporary weather patterns passing through the vast sky of our lives. They are imposters, and to bow to them is to surrender our freedom. Our society is structured like a great, unending race. From a young age, we are taught to compete, to achieve, to climb ladders of status and accomplishment. We are conditioned to believe that our intrinsic worth is directly proportional to our list of achievements. We carefully curate a resume self, a collection of titles, awards, and credentials that we present to the world as proof of our value. Our education, our career path, our financial status, even our hobbies and relationships can become part of this project of building a successful ego. This relentless pursuit creates a culture of pervasive anxiety. We are haunted by the fear of not being good enough, of falling behind, of making a wrong turn that will lead to the dreaded territory of failure. We scroll through the highlight reels of other people's lives on social media, comparing their curated successes with our own messy, unedited reality, and we feel a pang of inadequacy. This drive leads to burnout, to exhaustion, and to a gnawing sense that no matter how much we achieve, it is never quite enough. The finish line is always moving, because the validation that success provides is, by its very nature, temporary. Let us deconstruct these two powerful labels. First, look at the nature of success. Imagine achieving a long-sought goal, a major promotion, the completion of a difficult project, public recognition for your work. In the moment of achievement, there is a rush of joy, relief, and pride. But what happens next? Almost immediately, the peak experience begins to fade. The success of yesterday becomes today's new normal. The promotion brings with it new responsibilities and higher expectations. The public recognition creates a pressure to live up to your new reputation. The triumphant moment becomes a memory, a story you tell, and the mind, hungry for its next fix, begins to search for the next goal, the next peak to conquer. A great success, if we cling to it, can become a golden cage, imprisoning us in the past and creating a fear that we will never be able to top it. It is a cloud that momentarily catches the light in a spectacular way, but it is still just a cloud, destined to change its shape and drift on. Now, let us dare to look at failure. Our culture treats failure as an endpoint, a final verdict. We are taught to fear it, to hide it, to be ashamed of it. But from a wiser perspective, failure is one of our most potent and valuable teachers. It is simply data. It is life giving us direct, unambiguous feedback. Failure reveals the flaws in our strategy, the gaps in our knowledge, the areas where we need to grow. It tests our resilience and forces us to become more humble, more flexible, and often more creative. So many of the world's most celebrated successes were built directly on the foundation of what came before as spectacular failures. A failed business teaches lessons that lead to a successful one. A rejected manuscript is rewritten into a masterpiece. A broken relationship teaches us how to love more wisely. Failure is only a catastrophe if we believe it is the end of the story. If we see it as a plot twist, a moment of redirection, it loses its terrible power. There is a timeless Taoist story that perfectly captures the folly of labeling events as they happen. An old farmer had a horse that was the envy of the village. One day, the horse ran away. His neighbors came to offer their sympathy. "What terrible luck," they said. The farmer simply replied, "We shall see." A week later, the horse returned, leading a herd of magnificent wild horses with it. The neighbors came to congratulate him. "What wonderful luck," they exclaimed. The farmer replied, "We shall see." The next day, his son was trying to tame one of the wild horses when he was thrown off and broke his leg. The neighbors came to offer their condolences. "What awful luck," they sighed. The farmer just said, "We shall see." A few weeks later, the emperor's army came through the village, conscripting all the able-bodied young men for a brutal war from which few would return. Because the farmer's son had a broken leg, he was spared. The neighbors came to him in awe. "What incredible luck," they said. The farmer, looking out at his fields, replied, "We shall see." This story shows us the utter impossibility of knowing the true nature of an event from our limited, short-term perspective. Life's tapestry is too vast and complex. To label one thread good and another bad is to mistake a single stitch for the entire design. The liberating alternative to this roller coaster of success and failure is to shift our focus from the destination to the journey, from the outcome to the process. This is the art of wise effort. It does not mean becoming passive or ceasing to have goals. It means anchoring our sense of worth and satisfaction in the quality of our effort itself, an arena that is largely within our control, rather than in the outcome, which is influenced by a million factors beyond our control. It is to find joy in the act of creation, not just in the applause. It is to work with integrity, diligence, and mindfulness, because that is how you choose to engage with your life, not because you are angling for a reward. When you do this, you reclaim your power. You are no longer at the mercy of a boss's approval, a customer's decision, or the whims of the market. You find a deep and abiding peace in the knowledge that you are acting in alignment with your own values. With a whole and compassionate heart, the outcome will be what it will be. There is a famous encounter in Zen history that cuts to the heart of this matter. The Emperor Wu of Liang was a devout and powerful patron of Buddhism. He had spent a fortune building temples, commissioning artworks, and supporting monastic communities. When the great sage Bodhidharma came to his court, the emperor proudly listed his accomplishments. "I have done all these things for the sake of Buddhism," he said. "What is the merit of these great deeds?" He was essentially asking for his spiritual bank statement, expecting to be told his balance was enormous. Bodhidharma looked at him and delivered a shocking reply. "No merit whatsoever." The emperor was stunned. "How can that be?" he asked. "What then is the highest meaning of the holy truth?" Bodhidharma replied, "Vast emptiness, nothing holy." The emperor, unable to grasp this, dismissed him. He did not understand that Bodhidharma was not devaluing his actions, but pointing to his motivation. The emperor was acting from a mindset of accumulation, of ego. He was doing good deeds as a spiritual transaction, hoping to buy a favorable outcome for himself. He was still clinging to the idea of a self that could acquire merit. Bodhidharma's no merit was an invitation to act from a place of true generosity, from an understanding that the highest action is one performed without a trace of a self that seeks reward. It is action that is an end in itself, flowing naturally from a compassionate heart. This is the freedom that awaits us when we see through the two imposters. Success and failure are transient judgments, not identities. They are clouds, not the sky. By letting go of our attachment to them, we are freed from the constant, anxious need for external validation. We are no longer living for the approval of others, but for the integrity of our own journey. And most importantly, we are freed from the harshest judge of all, the relentless, critical voice within our own minds that tells us our worth is conditional. We can finally lay down the heavy burden of our own judgment and simply be. This relentless chase after success and the desperate flight from failure are fueled by a powerful, primal engine within us. To find lasting peace, we must now turn and look directly at this engine. We must understand the nature of desire itself. We have journeyed through the landscapes of the self, witnessing the impermanent nature of our identity and the fleeting judgments of success and failure. We have seen how we build elaborate, fragile structures of ego and then suffer when they inevitably tremble and shift. We must now ask a crucial question. What is the force that powers this endless construction project? What is the deep, restless energy that drives us to chase pleasure, to build ourselves up, to run from pain, and to cling so desperately to the fleeting forms of this world? The wisdom of the Buddha identifies this energy with a single, powerful word, tanha. Tanha, in the ancient Pali language, translates literally as thirst. But this is not the simple, physical thirst that can be quenched with a glass of water. It is a deep, existential thirst of the heart and mind. It is a burning, persistent, and deeply ingrained feeling of lack, an inner itch that we are always trying to scratch. It is the engine of our discontent, the restless momentum that keeps us perpetually seeking something more, something different from what is present in this moment. To understand tanha is not to condemn ourselves for having desires. It is to compassionately investigate the very mechanism that creates so much of our suffering, so that we can finally find a peace that does not depend on the next satisfaction. This fundamental thirst manifests in three primary ways. The first and most obvious is the craving for sense pleasures, or kama tanha. This is the thirst for agreeable experiences through our five senses and our mind. It is the craving for delicious food, for beautiful music, for captivating entertainment, for pleasant physical sensations, for sexual gratification, for comfort and ease. It is the pull we feel toward anything that promises a hit of pleasure. The pleasure itself is not the problem. The problem is the thirst, the clinging, the way the mind says, I like this, I need more of this, and then feels a sense of loss and dissatisfaction when the pleasant experience inevitably ends. It is the endless scrolling through social media feeds for the next interesting image, the compulsive snacking to soothe a restless mind, the channels surfing in search of a distraction. It is a constant, low-level hunt for the next pleasant stimulus, a strategy that keeps us perpetually occupied but never deeply fulfilled. The second form of thirst is deeper and more subtle. It is the craving for existence, or bhavatana. This is not just a thirst for a pleasant sensation. It is the thirst to be something, to become something more, to solidify and perpetuate our sense of self. This is the fuel of ambition, the drive for power, fame, wealth, and status. It is the craving that whispers, if only I were more successful, more respected, more powerful, then I would be whole, then I would be secure. It is the energy of the ego's expansion project. It is this thirst that drove the rich farmer in the parable to build bigger barns, believing that more possessions would guarantee his future existence and happiness. It is this thirst that motivated Emperor Wu to build temples, hoping to create a permanent, merit-filled spiritual identity for himself. At its deepest level, bhavatana is the profound resistance to our own impermanence. It is the desperate desire for our story to continue, for our wave to never crash, for ourself to be a solid and enduring entity in a universe of flux. The third face of thirst is the shadow of the second. It is the craving for non-existence, or vibhavatanya. This is the energy of aversion, annihilation, and pushing away. It is the violent thirst to get rid of what is unpleasant. When we experience physical pain, it is the craving for the pain to cease immediately. When we feel sadness, shame, or anxiety, it is the fierce desire to numb ourselves, to escape, to destroy the feeling. It is the anger we feel toward a person or situation we dislike, a desire for them to be gone. At its most extreme, this thirst for non-existence can manifest as self-harm or suicidal thoughts, the ultimate desire to annihilate the self that is perceived as the source of unbearable pain. This craving is just as much a battle against reality as the craving for pleasure. Whether we are desperately grasping for what we want or violently pushing away what we don't want, we are engaged in the same futile struggle against the way things are. We are refusing to let the river of life flow as it does. The reason this three-headed thirst is the root of our suffering is because it operates on a profound delusion. The central promise of tanha is that if we can just get what we want, or get rid of what we don't want, we will arrive at a state of lasting peace and happiness. But this promise is a lie, and the law of impermanence is the very thing that exposes it. The entire process is a feedback loop of suffering. It begins with a feeling of lack. The thirst arises, identifying an object or a state that it believes will fill this lack. We strive, we plan, we struggle, and perhaps we succeed. For a brief moment, there is satisfaction. The thirst is quenched, but because the object of our desire is impermanent, it changes. The delicious meal is over. The new car gets a scratch. The praise of others fades. The pleasant feeling disappears. Or we simply adapt and get used to the new reality, and it no longer brings us joy. The underlying feeling of lack returns, and the thirst arises once more, now seeking an even bigger, better, or newer object. It is a cycle that is, by its very nature, doomed to repeat itself endlessly. Trying to find lasting happiness by satisfying craving is like trying to build a house on the surface of a stormy sea. In Buddhist cosmology, There is a powerful and poignant metaphor for a mind consumed by this unquenchable thirst. It is the image of the preta, or the hungry ghost. These beings are depicted with huge, swollen bellies, representing their vast and insatiable desires. Their appetites are enormous, but they have necks as thin as a needle and mouths no bigger than a pinhole. Consequently, no matter how much they long for food or drink, they can never take in enough to relieve the gnawing, agonizing emptiness in their bellies. They are in a state of perpetual torment, always seeking, always grasping, but never, ever satisfied. This is not some literal monster in a distant hell realm. It is a penetrating psychological portrait of ourselves. It is the state of being a modern consumer, constantly told we are not enough, constantly chasing the next purchase. It is the state of the workaholic, chasing a success that never feels final. It is the state of anyone trapped on the hedonic treadmill. We live in a world of hungry ghosts, desperately trying to fill a spiritual emptiness with things that can never nourish us. So, what is the path to freedom? If we cannot satisfy this thirst, what can we do? The path is not one of more frantic doing, but of wise seeing. The conditioned response to a craving is to act immediately, either to indulge it or to suppress it. The mindful path is to pause and simply observe its arising as a natural, impersonal event. When the energy of thirst arises, can you meet it with awareness rather than reactivity? Can you feel it in your body, not as a command, but as a raw sensation? Perhaps it's a tension, a restlessness, a hollow feeling in the stomach. Can you notice the story the mind instantly creates around it? I need this. I can't live without this. This is unbearable. By holding the craving in a spacious, non-judgmental awareness, something remarkable happens. You create a gap between the stimulus and the response. In that gap is your freedom. You see that the craving is not a solid entity. It is a wave of energy that arises, crests, and if you do not feed it with your attention and your action, it will naturally subside. You do not have to be its slave. You can watch it come, and you can watch it go. Each time you do this, you weaken its power. You are retraining your mind, teaching it that you do not have to react to every itch. You are learning to find peace in the midst of the thirst, rather than in its temporary satisfaction. The unquenchable thirst of tanha is the restless engine that powers the wheel of suffering. It promises a paradise that, due to the universal law of impermanence, it can never deliver. Freedom is found not by running faster to find more water, but by understanding the nature of the thirst itself so deeply that it begins to wither at its very root. To understand this thirst is the first, crucial step. To work with it skillfully in our daily lives requires a specific tool, a particular quality of mind. This tool is the anchor in the storm of our desires. It is the practice and the power of mindfulness. We have journeyed deep into the inner workings of the mind, exposing the fragile nature of the self and the relentless, thirsty engine of craving that drives so much of our discontent. We have analyzed the human condition. We have mapped the sources of our suffering. But analysis alone is like reading a manual on how to swim without ever getting in the water. To truly transform our relationship with reality, we need more than a map. We need a vehicle. We need a practical, accessible tool that we can use in any moment to bring ourselves out of the tangled past and the imagined future, and into the living reality of the present. This tool, the very heart of Buddhist practice, is called mindfulness. In the Pali language, it is sati. In the West, the word mindfulness has become popular, but it is often misunderstood. It is frequently presented as a simple relaxation technique, a way to reduce stress or improve focus for the sake of productivity. While these can be welcome side effects, its true purpose is far more profound. Mindfulness is not about emptying the mind or stopping our thoughts. It is not about achieving some blissful, otherworldly state. The definition is beautifully simple and deeply practical. Mindfulness is the art of paying attention, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. It is the practice of waking up from the dream of our compulsive thinking and arriving fully in our actual lives. It is the anchor that can hold us steady in the midst of the inevitable storms of impermanence. So how do we practice this? The training begins with the most simple, reliable, and intimate process of our existence, the breath. The breath is the perfect object for mindful attention. It is always with us, from our first moment to our last. It requires no special equipment or location. Most importantly, the breath is always happening now. You cannot breathe in the past, nor can you breathe in the future. To be aware of your breath is, by definition, to be in the present moment. It is the bridge between our voluntary and involuntary systems, a rhythm that can be both automatic and consciously felt, connecting the outer world with our inner life. Let us try a short exploration together. Find a posture that is comfortable for you, either sitting on a chair or on a cushion on the floor. Allow your back to be upright but not rigid, in a posture of dignity and ease. You can gently close your eyes or leave them softly open with your gaze lowered. Now, simply bring your attention to the physical sensation of your breath. You don't need to change it, control it, or do anything to it. Just feel it. You might notice the cool air entering your nostrils and the warm air leaving, or you might prefer to rest your attention on the gentle rise and fall of your abdomen or chest. Choose one of these spots and let your awareness rest there, as if it were a butterfly resting on a flower. Simply feel the sensations of one inhalation and one exhalation. Now comes the most important instruction of all. Inevitably, your mind will wander. This is not a mistake. It is not a sign that you are a bad meditator. It is simply what minds do. It will drift off into a thought, a memory, a plan, a worry, a sound. The moment you notice that your mind has wandered, that very moment of noticing is the golden moment of mindfulness. In that instant, you have woken up. The practice is not to scold yourself or feel frustrated. The practice is to gently acknowledge where the mind went, perhaps with a soft mental note like thinking or planning, and then, with immense kindness, to guide your attention back to the physical sensation of the breath. That is all. The entire practice is this gentle rhythm of wandering, noticing, and kindly returning. Each return is like a single push-up for the muscle of your attention. You are not trying to achieve a perfect, unbroken state of focus. You are training in the art of beginning again, a skill that will serve you in every aspect of your life. While formal sitting practice is invaluable for strengthening this mental muscle, the ultimate goal is to bring this quality of awareness off the cushion and into the fabric of your daily life. Every moment is an opportunity to be mindful. You can practice while eating. Instead of mindlessly consuming food while watching a screen, you can try eating a single meal in silence. Notice the colors and textures of the food. Smell its aroma. When you take a bite, chew slowly. Notice the explosion of flavors. Feel the sensation of swallowing. You will discover that a simple piece of fruit, eaten mindfully, can be a more profound and satisfying experience than an elaborate banquet eaten in a state of distraction. You can practice while walking. Instead of rushing from point A to point B, lost in thought, bring your attention to the physical act of walking. Feel the sensation of your feet making contact with the ground, the pressure on the heel, the shift of weight to the ball of the foot, the lifting of the leg. You can sync your breath with your steps. The purpose is not to get somewhere, but simply to be present for the journey of each step. You can practice while washing the dishes. Feel the warmth of the water on your hands. See the iridescent bubbles of the soap. Hear the sound of the water. Feel the smooth surface of a clean plate. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh said that you should wash the dishes, to wash the dishes, not just to have clean dishes. By being fully present for the task, the chore is transformed into a moment of peace. Any routine activity, brushing your teeth, taking a shower, drinking a cup of tea, can become a sanctuary of presence. Why is this simple act of paying attention so transformative? Because it creates a space. In our normal unmindful state, we live in a contracted loop of stimulus and reaction. An event occurs, someone cuts us off in traffic, and we react instantly with a surge of anger and a cascade of hostile thoughts. A craving for a cigarette arises, and we reach for one automatically. There is no space between the trigger and our habitual, conditioned response. We are like puppets, pulled by the strings of our past conditioning. Mindfulness inserts what has been called a sacred pause into this process. Because you are more present, when the car cuts you off, you have a moment of awareness before the full-blown reaction takes hold. You might notice, there is a jolt of surprise. There is a tightening in my chest. There is the thought, what a jerk, arising in my mind. In that space of noticing, you are no longer the anger. You are the witness of the anger. And in that space, you have a choice. You can choose to indulge the anger, honk the horn, and ruin your own peace of mind. Or you can choose to take a breath, to let the feeling pass, and to continue on your way with your inner calm intact. You are no longer a puppet. You have reclaimed your freedom. This ability to choose your response, rather than being a slave to your reactions, is the foundation of a wise and compassionate life. Imagine a master tightrope walker poised across a great chasm. His balance is perfect, his concentration absolute. His secret is not that he has no fear. His secret is that he knows where to place his attention. If he looks back at the part of the rope he has already crossed, he will be lost in regret or pride, and he will fall. If he looks too far ahead at his destination, he will be consumed by anxiety and desire, and he will fall. If he looks down into the abyss, he will be paralyzed by fear. His only task, the only thing that will keep him safe, is to bring his entire, undivided being to the feeling of the rope beneath his feet and the single, simple step he is taking right now. That is his anchor. That is his refuge. Our lives are this tightrope, stretched across the chasm of birth and death. The past and future are dangerous distractions. The abyss below is the chaos of our unobserved minds. Mindfulness is the art of walking this rope. It is the practice of returning, again and again, with gentle determination, to the raw, vibrant, and immediate reality of the present moment. It is not about getting somewhere else. It is the profound art of fully arriving where you already are, in the only place life ever truly happens, here and now. It is the essential tool that allows us to see impermanence clearly, to feel the pull of craving without being ruled by it, and to find peace not by changing our life, but by being fully, wakefully present for it. This practice of mindfulness, of clear and non-judgmental seeing, allows us to observe everything that arises in our experience, the pleasant and the unpleasant. But what do we do when what arises is difficult, painful, or unwelcome? Clear seeing alone is not enough. It must be paired with an open heart. This brings us to the profound and courageous practice of acceptance. Having cultivated the clear seeing eye of mindfulness, we are now able to watch the ceaseless parade of phenomena that marches through our experience. We can observe our thoughts, feel our emotions, and sense the world around us with a new clarity. But seeing alone is only half of the journey. The crucial question remains: what is our relationship to what we see? When the parade is filled with pleasant sights and sounds, joy, success, love, it is easy to watch with a smile. But what happens when the parade turns dark? What is our response when the marchers are pain, fear, loss, and disappointment? This is the moment where our practice is truly tested. It is here that we must learn to complement the clear eye of mindfulness with the open heart of acceptance. These two qualities are the two wings of a bird. Without both, we cannot fly. The word acceptance is perhaps one of the most misunderstood in all of spiritual practice. For many, it conjures images of passivity, resignation, and defeated surrender. It sounds like giving up, like letting the world walk all over you. But this is a profound misinterpretation. True acceptance is not passive. It is a courageous, active, and deeply empowered engagement with reality. Resignation is the hopeless whisper. There's nothing I can do. It is a state of collapse. Acceptance is the calm, clear declaration. This is what is happening right now. It is a state of clarity. Resignation is throwing down your tools in despair. Acceptance is putting down your weapons of resistance so that you can pick up the right tools for the job. It is the essential first step toward any form of wise and effective action. To understand the power of acceptance, we must first understand the mechanics of suffering. There is a simple but life-altering equation that clarifies this. Suffering equals pain multiplied by resistance. Let us look at each component. Pain is the first part of the equation. In the course of a human life, pain is inevitable. It is the clean, unavoidable discomfort of existence. It can be physical pain, a chronic illness, an injury, a headache. It can be emotional pain, the grief of losing a loved one, the sting of rejection, the fear that arises in the face of uncertainty. This pain is the first arrow, as the Buddha called it. It is the raw data of life hitting our sensitive nervous system. As long as we are alive and have a body and a heart, we will experience these first arrows. There is no armor that can protect us from them completely. The second part of the equation is resistance. This is the second arrow. This is the arrow we shoot at ourselves. Resistance is the mind's reaction to the primary pain. It is the layer of judgment, commentary, and struggle that we add on top of the raw experience. It is the voice in our head that says, "This shouldn't be happening. I can't stand this. Why me? It's not fair. This will never end." It is the tensing of the body around a physical pain, the mental warfare we wage against an unwanted emotion. It is this resistance, this second arrow, that multiplies the original pain and transforms it into what we call suffering. Let us make this concrete. Imagine you wake up with a painful, stiff neck. That's the first arrow. The raw, physical sensation is the clean pain. Now, notice the mind's reaction. "Oh no, my neck hurts. This is going to ruin my whole day. I won't be able to work. What if it's something serious? I hate this feeling. I need it to go away right now." All of these thoughts are second arrows. They create anxiety, frustration, and despair. This mental anguish tenses the muscles of your neck and shoulders even further, which in turn intensifies the physical pain. The original pain might have been a 3 on a scale of 10, but your resistance has amplified it into a full-blown suffering that is an 8 or a 9. Consider the emotional pain of sadness after a significant loss. The sadness itself is the first arrow. It is a natural, healthy response of the heart. It is the clean pain of love. The resistance, the second arrow, comes when we judge ourselves for it. "I should be over this by now. I need to be strong for others." Crying is a sign of weakness. There must be something wrong with me. This self-judgment doesn't make the sadness go away. It just adds a heavy layer of shame and anxiety on top of it, preventing the natural process of grieving and healing from unfolding. We suffer not just from the sadness, but from our war against the sadness. The practice of acceptance is the practice of learning not to shoot the second arrow. It is the art of feeling the first arrow's pain without multiplying it through resistance. This is not easy, but it is a skill we can cultivate. The central metaphor for this practice is the simple act of unclenching a fist. Resistance is a fist, clenched tightly around our pain. It takes a constant, exhausting effort to maintain this grip. We think that by squeezing and fighting, we can destroy the pain, but all we are doing is trapping it and tiring ourselves out in the process. Acceptance is the courageous act of slowly, deliberately opening the hand. It is letting go of the struggle. It is allowing the pain to be there, in the open palm of our awareness, without needing it to be different. In this space, something remarkable happens. When we stop fighting the pain, it often loses its intensity. It has room to breathe, to change, to flow, and eventually to pass. To make this practical, we can use a beautiful and compassionate mindfulness practice known by the acronym RAIN. This is a structured way to meet difficult emotions with acceptance. Let's say a wave of anxiety arises. The first step, R, is to recognize. You simply and gently name what is happening. "Ah, this is anxiety," or "Anxiety is here." This simple act of naming creates a space between you and the emotion. It pulls you out of being completely identified with it. The second step, A, is to allow. This is the heart of acceptance. You give the feeling permission to exist. You mentally say, "It's okay. You can be here for a little while." You stop fighting. You stop trying to push it away. You lay down the weapons of resistance and let the emotion be, just as it is, without needing it to change. The third step, I, is to investigate. This is not a cold, analytical investigation. It is an investigation with gentle, embodied curiosity. You can ask yourself, what does this actually feel like in my body? You might notice a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a rapid heartbeat. You just notice these physical sensations without judgment. What does this feeling want from me? What does it believe? You are not taking the thoughts as truth, but you are listening with a curious ear. This step deepens your understanding of the emotion and further desolidifies it. The final step, N, is for nurture. This is the act of bringing active compassion to yourself. Having recognized, allowed, and investigated this moment of suffering, you now offer yourself a gesture of kindness. You might place a hand over your heart and feel its warmth. You might whisper some kind words to yourself, such as, "This is really hard. It's okay to feel this way." This step of nurturing ensures that your acceptance is not a cold resignation, but a warm, compassionate embrace. It is also a practice of non-identification, reminding yourself that you are not the anxiety. You are the loving awareness that is holding the anxiety. This practice can be revolutionary. It transforms your relationship with your own inner life, from one of conflict to one of friendship. You learn that even the most difficult emotions can be held with wisdom and care. This directly relates to the parable of the second arrow. The Buddha taught that in life, we cannot always avoid the first arrow. Sickness, old age, loss, and disappointment are part of the human condition. But the wise person, when struck by a first arrow, feels the pain but does not generate resentment, self-pity, or despair. They do not compound their suffering by shooting themselves with a second arrow of their own making. They feel the clean pain of one arrow, not the agonizing suffering of two. Acceptance is the courageous act of putting down the bow and arrow of our own reactivity. It is absolutely essential to understand that this powerful acceptance of present reality is not an obstacle to action. It is the necessary foundation for all wise action. If your house is on fire, acceptance does not mean sitting in a chair and saying, "I accept that my house is on fire." That is insanity. True acceptance means you look at the flames and say, "Okay, the house is on fire. I accept this reality completely." This clear, non-panicked acceptance frees your mind from the paralysis of denial and fear. With this clarity, you can then ask, what is the most skillful thing to do right now? You can call for help, get your family out, use a fire extinguisher. You can only act effectively when you have first fully accepted the situation you are in. This applies to all of life's challenges. If you are struggling with debt, resignation says, "It's hopeless," and you do nothing. Acceptance says, "I accept the reality of my financial situation right now." This clarity liberates the enormous amount of mental energy you were wasting on shame, blame, and wishful thinking, and makes it available for skillful action. Now you can create a budget, seek advice, or look for new sources of income. If you receive a difficult health diagnosis, acceptance does not mean giving up on treatment. It means fully acknowledging the reality of your body's condition so that you can partner with your doctors, make necessary lifestyle changes, and live the fullest and most joyful life possible within your new circumstances. Fighting reality is the most draining and futile activity a human being can engage in. Acceptance is a profound conservation of energy. It is letting go of the beach ball you have been struggling to hold underwater. When you let go, all that energy is returned to you, ready to be used for healing, for living, and for loving. When we combine this practice with our understanding of impermanence, it becomes even more gentle. We are not accepting that a difficult situation will be this way forever. We are simply accepting that it is this way right now. This too shall pass. The pain, the emotion, the difficult circumstance side is all just a cloud passing through the vast sky of our awareness. We can let it be, and we can let it go. Acceptance, then, is the ultimate act of sanity. It is the practice of aligning ourselves with the truth of the present moment. It is not a weak surrender. It is a courageous and compassionate embrace of life, in all its beauty and all its pain. It is the wisdom to not add suffering to our suffering. It is the profound relief of unclenching the fist of our resistance and finally opening our hand to life, just as it is. When we stop fighting the river and learn to flow with it through this radical acceptance, a surprising and beautiful quality begins to bloom in the heart. We begin to see the profound preciousness of each moment. This leads us from acceptance into the warm and luminous space of gratitude. Having walked the courageous path of acceptance, learning to open our hands to the reality of the present moment, something remarkable begins to happen. When we cease our exhausting war with what is, the battlefield quiets. And in that quiet, a new kind of perception can arise. The landscape of our lives, which may have once seemed fraught with threats and deficiencies, begins to reveal a subtle and profound beauty. This shift in perception, this unexpected flowering in the heart, is the spirit of gratitude. Gratitude is not a forced positivity or a naive denial of life's difficulties. It is the natural, joyful, and wise response of a mind that has begun to understand and embrace the truth of impermanence. We are taught to believe that if things were permanent, they would be more valuable. We strive for permanent security, permanent youth, permanent love, thinking that their lastingness is what would make them precious. But the deep wisdom of the heart knows a different truth. It is precisely because life is fleeting that it is so intensely precious. The value of a thing is not in its duration, but in its presence. The most poignant beauty is always inseparable from a sense of its own passing. Think of the breathtaking beauty of cherry blossoms in the spring. Their delicate pink and white clouds transform the landscape for a short, magical time. We are moved to stop, to gaze, to take photographs, to have picnics beneath their branches. Why? Because we know, with a certainty that sharpens our senses, that in a week or two, they will be gone, scattered by the wind and the rain. If cherry trees bloomed all year round, they would become just another part of the scenery. We would walk past them without a second thought. Their beauty is not just in their color and form, it is in their magnificent and poignant impermanence. Their fleeting nature is a command to be present, to pay attention, to appreciate them now. The same is true for a spectacular sunset. As the sky ignites in fiery shades of orange, purple, and gold, we stop what we are doing. We feel a sense of awe. This is because we are witnessing a unique, unrepeatable performance of light and atmosphere that will dissolve into darkness within minutes. Its beauty is its vanishing act. This same principle applies to our lives. The knowledge that our time here is finite is not a morbid curse. It is the very thing that gives our choices meaning, our relationships depth, and our moments value. Anicca, impermanence, is not life's flaw. It is the secret ingredient that makes life sacred. Yet, the default setting of the human mind often works against this realization. Due to an evolutionary quirk designed to help our ancestors survive by spotting threats, our minds have a built-in negativity bias. We are naturally wired to scan our environment for what is wrong, what is missing, what could be a problem. This creates a mental habit of living in a state of perceived scarcity. Our attention is constantly drawn to the unpaid bill, the critical comment, the flaw in our appearance, the goal not yet achieved. We live our lives as if we are chronically deficient, always focused on the gap between where we are and where we think we should be. Gratitude is the direct and powerful antidote to this scarcity mentality. It is a conscious and deliberate practice of shifting our attention. It is the training of the mind to notice not what is missing, but what is present. It is learning to see the overwhelming abundance that already surrounds us, an abundance we have been taught to overlook. Like any skill, it grows stronger with practice. The practice can be as simple as starting a gratitude journal. At the end of each day, take just a few minutes to write down 3 to 5 things for which you are genuinely grateful. They do not need to be monumental events. In fact, the practice is often more powerful when we focus on the small, simple things we usually take for granted. I am grateful for the taste of my morning coffee. I am grateful for the warmth of my bed. I am grateful for the solid feeling of the ground beneath my feet. I am grateful for the stranger who smiled at me. This simple act, performed consistently, begins to rewire the neural pathways of the brain. It trains your mind to actively scan your day for moments of goodness, beauty, and grace. You start to notice more and more things to be grateful for, not because the world has changed, but because your perception of it has. We can bring this practice directly to our own bodies. Having contemplated the body's impermanence, we can now contemplate it with deep gratitude. Can you feel a sense of thankfulness for your heart, which has been beating tirelessly for you, day and night, for your entire life? Can you feel gratitude for your lungs, which constantly draw in the life-giving air of the world without any conscious effort from you? Can you be grateful for your eyes that allow you to see the face of a loved one, and for your ears that allow you to hear music? We so often only notice these faculties when they fail us. The practice of gratitude is to appreciate the miracle of their functioning, right here and now. This sense of wonder can be extended to the ordinary miracles that underpin our modern lives. Can we feel a moment of gratitude for the clean water that flows miraculously from a tap? Billions of people throughout history, and even today, do not have this simple luxury. Can we feel gratitude for the electricity that lights our homes at the flip of a switch, for the refrigerator that keeps our food fresh, for the vast, invisible network of the internet that connects us to a world of knowledge and to each other. We are surrounded by wonders that our ancestors would have considered magic, yet we have become so accustomed to them that they have become invisible. Gratitude makes them visible again. There is a beautiful teaching from the Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh that perfectly illustrates this. He speaks of eating a single tangerine with mindfulness and gratitude. As you hold the tangerine in your palm, you are invited to look deeply into it. When you do, you see that the tangerine contains the entire cosmos. You see the sunshine that warmed the tree and gave the fruit its sweetness. You see the clouds that gathered to produce the rain that nourished its roots. You see the rich earth that provided its nutrients. You see the hands of the farmer who planted the seed, tended the tree, and harvested the fruit. You see the entire, intricate, and miraculous web of interconnection that had to exist for this single tangerine to arrive in your hand. When you then peel it and eat a section, you are not just eating a piece of fruit. You are tasting the sun, the rain, the earth. The simple act of eating is transformed into a profound communion with life, and the natural response of the heart is one of deep gratitude. As our practice deepens, we can even learn to find gratitude for our challenges. This does not mean we enjoy hardship or seek it out. It means we develop the wisdom to look back at our most difficult times and recognize them as our most powerful teachers. The painful failure taught us humility and resilience. The difficult relationship taught us about our own patterns and needs. The period of loneliness taught us the value of connection. The illness taught us the preciousness of health. To be able to say thank you to the thorns as well as the roses is to embrace the fullness of life, trusting that every part of the journey, even the parts that are painful, can be a catalyst for our growth and awakening. Gratitude is the heart's response to the precious, fleeting, and miraculous nature of existence. It shifts our entire orientation from a life of complaint to a life of appreciation, from a mindset of lack to a mindset of abundance. A grateful heart is not a shield against sorrow, but it is a larger container in which sorrow can be held. It allows us to feel pain without being defined by it, to face challenges without being crushed by them. It is the warm light that illuminates the profound beauty of what is, right here, right now. This opening of the heart through gratitude does not stop with our own personal experience of joy. When the heart is truly open, it naturally begins to radiate outward. It sees the struggles and triumphs of others with a new clarity and warmth. This leads us from the personal feeling of gratitude to the universal expression of compassion. As the flower of gratitude blooms in the heart, nourished by mindfulness and acceptance, it begins to release a beautiful and subtle fragrance. This is the fragrance of a heart that is no longer closed in on itself, but is opening to the world. And as it opens, it becomes exquisitely sensitive, not only to the beauty and joy of life, but also to its pain, its sorrow, its inherent vulnerability. The heart's natural, intelligent, and immediate response to the awareness of suffering is compassion. In the Pali language, this is karuna. Karuna is not pity, which looks down from a position of superiority. It is not mere empathy, which can lead to being overwhelmed by another's pain. Karuna is the trembling of a noble heart in the face of suffering, combined with the powerful, active aspiration to see that suffering relieved. It is not a heavy moral duty or something we should feel. It is the logical and unavoidable flowering of wisdom itself. It is what happens when a clear mind and a loving heart look upon the world together. This journey into compassion must begin in the most difficult and often most neglected territory of all, ourselves. For most of us, our capacity for kindness and forgiveness is extended outward far more readily than it is inward. We are our own harshest judges, our own most relentless critics. We carry within us an inner tribunal that is constantly reviewing our past actions, judging our present feelings, and finding us wanting. We hold ourselves to an impossible standard of perfection, and then we berate, shame, and punish ourselves for the simple, unavoidable fact of being a flawed and imperfect human being. To try and offer genuine compassion to others while maintaining this inner state of self-aggression is like trying to water a garden from a poisoned well. It is unsustainable. It leads to burnout, hypocrisy, and a subtle resentment towards those we are trying to help. True, lasting compassion for others must be built upon the unshakable foundation of self-compassion. It is not selfish. It is the essential prerequisite for a sane and sustainable life of kindness. The practice of self-compassion is a gentle rebellion against the tyranny of the inner critic. It has three core components. The first is mindfulness. We must first learn to simply hear the voice of the inner judge without automatically believing its story. We notice the critical thoughts. You're not smart enough. You always mess things up. You shouldn't feel that way, as just thoughts, as passing mental events, not as objective truth. The second component is the recognition of our common humanity. In moments of failure or inadequacy, our shame isolates us. We feel that I am the only one who is so broken. Self-compassion reminds us that the opposite is true. To be human is to be imperfect, to make mistakes, to feel fear, to be vulnerable. This is not a personal failing. It is the shared, universal experience of our species. By remembering this, we move from harsh self-isolation to a gentle sense of kinship with all people. The third, and most active, component is kindness. This means learning to treat ourselves with the same warmth, care, and encouragement that we would offer to a dear friend who was suffering. When you are hurting, can you offer yourself a gesture of physical soothing, like placing a hand over your heart and feeling its warmth? This simple act can calm the body's stress response. Can you offer yourself words of gentle encouragement? Not hollow platitudes, but a genuine acknowledgement of the difficulty. This is a moment of suffering. It's so hard to feel this way right now. May I be kind to myself in this moment. This is a radical act. We are rewiring a lifetime of conditioning, learning to become our own ally instead of our own enemy. We are learning to love the messy, beautiful, and ever-changing process that we are, rather than hating ourselves for not being some imaginary, perfect statue. Once we have begun to establish this foundation of self-kindness, we can begin to expand the circle of compassion outward. One of its greatest tests is in our relationship with those who have hurt us. Our instinct when wronged is to contract, to build walls of anger and blame, to wish for retribution. Compassion invites us to do something far more challenging and ultimately more liberating, to look behind the harmful action and see the suffering that motivated it. Happy, contented, and peaceful people do not go around causing harm. Hurt people hurt people. The person who insults you is likely suffering from a deep-seated insecurity. The person who acts with greed is driven by a painful feeling of inner poverty. The person who is cruel is often drowning in their own fear and anger. Their harmful actions are the second arrows they are shooting out into the world, but they are doing so because they themselves have been struck by a first arrow of their own pain, ignorance, and delusion. To see this is not to condone their actions. This is a crucial distinction. Compassion does not mean becoming a doormat. It does not mean you must excuse harmful behavior or remain in a toxic situation. You can and should set firm boundaries, say no, protect yourself, and hold people accountable for their actions. The compassion is an inner shift of the heart. It is for your benefit. It frees you from the corrosive poison of hatred and resentment, which harms you far more than it harms the other person. You can see the other person as someone who is spiritually and emotionally unwell, afflicted by the ancient sicknesses of greed, hatred, and ignorance. You wouldn't hate someone for having a fever. You would simply take care to protect yourself while perhaps wishing them a speedy recovery. This attitude allows you to respond to difficult people with clarity and strength, but without the inner torment of bitterness. This capacity for compassion deepens exponentially when we integrate it with the wisdom of no self or anatta. As long as we believe in a solid, separate me here, and a solid, separate you over there, the world is fundamentally divided. My suffering is my problem, and your suffering is yours. But as we have seen, this separate self is an illusion. We are not isolated islands. We are all deeply interconnected, like waves in a single ocean. The great master Thich Nhat Hanh coined the term interbeing to describe this reality. A flower, he explained, is made only of non-flower elements: the sunshine, the rain, the soil, the air. It interrees with everything else. In the same way, we are made of non-us elements. Our parents and ancestors, the food we've eaten, the air we breathe, the culture we live in, the ideas we've absorbed. We are all inextricably part of one another. When we feel this truth in our bones, the logic of compassion becomes self-evident. The suffering over there is no longer truly separate from us. The injustice felt by a community on the other side of the world is a pain in the collective body of humanity to which we belong. The destruction of the natural world is a wound on the larger planetary body of which we are a single cell. From this perspective of interbeing, compassion is no longer a lofty moral choice. It becomes the simple, sane, and spontaneous response of a healthy organism tending to a part of itself that is wounded. It is the way your left hand will automatically rush to care for your right hand if it is burned. There is no thought process of, as a left hand, I have a moral duty to help my fellow hand. There is only the immediate, intelligent, and loving action that arises from the recognition of being part of a single whole. There is a moving story from the Buddha's life that embodies this profound, active compassion. He was once walking through a monastery when he came upon a monk who was gravely ill. He was suffering from a contagious and foul-smelling skin disease, and his body was covered in sores. The other monks, overcome by fear and disgust, had completely abandoned him, leaving him to lie in his own filth. When the Buddha saw this, he did not utter a single word of blame or lecture. He immediately went to a fire, boiled some water, and then, with his own hands, he began to gently wash the sick monk's body. He cleaned his sores and carefully changed his soiled robes, tending to him with the same care one would give to a beloved child. The other monks, seeing this, gathered around, overcome with shame. It was only then that the Buddha spoke to them. He said, "Monks, you have no mother or father here to look after you. If you do not care for one another, who then will care for you?" And then he delivered one of the most powerful teachings on compassion ever recorded. "Whoever would tend to me should tend to the sick." In this single act and these few words, the Buddha revealed the essence of karuna. It is practical and embodied, not just a nice idea. It overcomes aversion and fear. It is rooted in the deep understanding of our shared vulnerability and interdependence. And in his final statement, he completely dissolved the illusion of separation. To care for the most wretched, forgotten being is to care for the highest principle of enlightenment itself. They are not two different things. This, then, is the path of compassion. It is the trembling of a noble heart that begins with the courage to be kind to our own imperfect selves. It expands with the wisdom to see the suffering that drives the harmful actions of others. And it culminates in the liberating realization that we are all interconnected, all interbeing, all floating on the same great river of life. Compassion is not something we do to be a good person. It is what we become when we allow our hearts to respond naturally, intelligently, and lovingly to the profound truth of our shared existence. This deep feeling of compassion, this trembling of the heart, naturally calls for expression. It yearns to move from being a state of heart to being an act in the world. But how do we act in a world of suffering without becoming overwhelmed or attached to the results of our actions? This brings us to the skillful art of compassionate action. Having awakened the compassionate heart, we are naturally moved to act. A heart that truly understands our shared vulnerability and interconnectedness cannot remain idle in a world filled with suffering. It yearns to reach out, to help, to serve, to alleviate pain. But this noble impulse brings us to a profound paradox. How do we engage fully with the world, striving to make it a better place, without getting caught in the very webs of attachment, ambition, and frustration we have worked so hard to understand? How can we care deeply about the results of our actions, yet not let our inner peace be dependent on them? This is the art of wise action, the practice of learning to leave gentle footprints in the sand, giving our all to every step while knowing that the tide will inevitably come. In the Buddhist path, this is known as sammakamanta, or right action. On one level, this provides a clear ethical guide to abstain from actions that cause harm, such as killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. But its deeper meaning extends far beyond a simple list of rules. It points to the inner quality, the motivation, that lies behind any action we take. The true nature of an action is determined not by its outer appearance, but by the purity of the intention that gives it birth. We must ask ourselves, am I acting from a place of generosity and kindness? Or am I acting from a desire to get something in return: praise, recognition, wealth, power, or even a good reputation for being a good person? Am I acting from a place of clarity or from a place of fear? Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being liked. Imagine two people giving a large sum of money to a charitable cause. Outwardly, the action is identical, but the first person does so with a great deal of fanfare, ensuring their name is publicized, motivated by the social status and tax benefits it will bring. Their action, though helpful on the surface, is fundamentally a transaction designed to build up their own ego. The second person gives the same amount anonymously, moved simply by a direct and compassionate response to a need they witnessed. Their action is a pure offering, a quiet expression of their connection to others. It is free from the clinging of the self. The first action, rooted in attachment, ultimately reinforces the cycle of craving and ego. The second action, rooted in freedom, becomes a source of peace for both the giver and the receiver. To practice wise action is to learn to act like the second person, to give our time, our energy, and our skills to the world simply because it is the kind and helpful thing to do, without seeking a reward or keeping a hidden ledger of merit. This naturally leads to a common question. Does this mean we should not have goals? If we are unattached to outcomes, why bother striving for anything at all? This is a misunderstanding of non-attachment. It is not about apathy or inaction. Goals are essential. They provide direction, focus, and a container for our energy. The problem is not in having a goal, but in our rigid, fearful attachment to achieving it. Consider the metaphor of a master archer. The archer has a clear goal, to hit the center of the target. To this end, they dedicate themselves completely to the process. They spend years perfecting their stance, strengthening their arms, controlling their breath, and sharpening their focus. When they prepare to shoot, they are 100% committed to the quality of their action. This is wise effort. This is setting a goal. However, the moment the arrow leaves the bow, the outcome is no longer entirely in their control. A sudden gust of wind may arise. There might be an unseen flaw in the arrow's fletching. The light might change. The archer who is attached to the outcome has tied their entire sense of self-worth to where that arrow lands. If it hits the bullseye, they are elated. If it misses, they are consumed by frustration, self-criticism, and despair. Their inner peace is completely at the mercy of external factors. The wise archer, however, finds their primary satisfaction in the quality of the shot itself. They know they did everything in their power, that they were fully present and committed in the moment of release. They accept the result with equanimity. If the arrow hits, there is a quiet joy. If it misses, there is a quiet analysis. What can I learn from this? They do not carry the weight of failure into their next shot. Their freedom lies in divorcing their self-worth from the outcome and grounding it in the integrity of their own actions. This is the model for our lives. We must learn to be this archer, to choose our targets with wisdom, to aim with all our skill and heart, and to let the arrow fly, surrendering the result to the vast and unpredictable winds of life. When we practice this for some time, a new quality of action can emerge, one that feels almost effortless. In the philosophy of Taoism, this is known as Wu Wei, which can be translated as non-doing or effortless action. This does not mean being lazy or inert. It is the state of acting in perfect harmony with the natural flow of life, like a skilled surfer riding a powerful wave. The surfer is not creating the wave's energy. They are using their skill, balance, and intuition to move with it, to dance with its power. There is immense activity, but no struggle. The sense of a separate doer fighting against the world dissolves. Think of a gifted musician lost in their music, a talented craftsperson absorbed in their work, or a parent lovingly tending to a child. In these moments of deep flow, the sense of I am doing this fades away, and there is only the doing. This is Wu Wei. It is the highest form of wise action, where our intentions are so pure and our presence so complete that our actions become as natural and spontaneous as a river flowing to the sea. The supreme embodiment of this principle of compassionate action without attachment is the figure of the Bodhisattva in Mahayana Buddhism. A Bodhisattva is a being of profound wisdom who has reached the very threshold of complete liberation, of final nirvana. Yet, out of boundless compassion for all beings still trapped in suffering, they make a conscious, heartfelt vow to delay their own final peace. They choose to remain in the world, life after life, using their wisdom and skill to help others awaken. The Bodhisattva acts with incredible power and effectiveness, yet their every action is completely selfless. They are not motivated by any desire for personal gain, not even the gain of spiritual merit. Their helping is not a transaction. It is the spontaneous and radiant overflow of their enlightened heart, as natural as the sun shining or a flower releasing its fragrance. They are like someone who walks on a sandy beach, leaving clear footprints of guidance and help for others to follow. But they do so with the full understanding that the tide of impermanence will eventually wash every print away. They are not attached to their legacy. They act with their entire being, but their heart remains utterly free. They are the ultimate example of being fully engaged in the world while being completely free from it. This is the freedom that wise action offers us. It is the freedom to love the world without needing it to love us back. It is the freedom to dedicate ourselves to a cause without our happiness being dependent on its success. It is the freedom to parent a child with all our heart, not to create a specific outcome, but for the sheer joy of nurturing a life. It is the freedom to create, to serve, to help, and to love, simply because that is the most beautiful expression of a human life, a life that has understood its own transient and interconnected nature. We give ourselves fully to the dance, knowing that we are not the dancer, but the dance itself. This ability to act with grace and freedom is a powerful skill for navigating the ordinary currents of life. But life, in its infinite creativity, sometimes presents us with situations that go far beyond ordinary challenges. What happens when the river of impermanence is no longer a gentle flow, but a raging, destructive flood? What happens when we must face the immense and overwhelming storms of profound loss and grief? We have learned to act in the world with a wise and compassionate heart, to leave footprints of kindness in the sand without being attached to their permanence. This is a powerful way to navigate the daily currents of life, with its gentle ebbs and flows. But there are times when the ocean of existence is not calm. There are times when the sky darkens, the winds howl, and the gentle flow becomes a raging, overwhelming storm. These are the times of great and profound loss. These are the storms of grief that come with the death of a loved one, a life-altering illness, or a devastating separation. In the face of such immense pain, all our philosophies can seem fragile and inadequate. It is here, in the heart of our deepest suffering, that the wisdom of impermanence is most needed, not as a shield to block the pain, but as a sturdy and seaworthy vessel to help us navigate the storm without being drowned by it. Let us be clear from the very beginning. The aim of this wisdom is not to eliminate grief. Grief is not a problem to be solved. It is not a sickness to be cured or a weakness to be overcome. Grief is the natural, honorable, and necessary response of a loving heart to a profound loss. The pain you feel when you lose someone you love is a direct measure of the love you shared. In this sense, grief is a sacred expression of love itself. It is the form love takes when its object is gone. The cultural pressure to get over it quickly, to be strong, to put on a brave face, is a form of violence against the soul. It asks us to deny a fundamental truth of our own heart. Suppressed grief does not vanish. It simply goes underground, where it festers into anxiety, depression, and a frozenness of spirit. The path of wisdom does not ask us to dam the river of our sorrow. It asks us to have the courage to let it flow, trusting that it has its own intelligence, its own rhythm, its own season. Grief is not a single, solid state. It is an ocean of waves. There are towering waves of agonizing sadness, crashing waves of anger, confusing waves of guilt and regret, and strange, empty waves of numbness. At times, there can even be unexpected, gentle waves of peace or fond remembrance. The practice here is not to control these waves, but to learn how to be a wise surfer upon them. It is to allow each wave to arise, to feel its energy fully without resistance, and to trust that it will, in its own time, recede. To fight the waves, to stand rigidly against them, is to be broken by them. To allow them, to move with them, is to survive the storm. So, how does the deep understanding of impermanence act as our vessel in this storm? Its primary function is to prevent us from shooting ourselves with second arrows while we are already pierced by the first. The first arrow is the clean pain of the loss itself. It is pure, and it is unavoidable. The second, third, and fourth arrows are the layers of mental suffering we add through our resistance to this reality. First, the wisdom of impermanence helps to dissolve the agonizing question, why? When a tragedy strikes, the mind screams, this shouldn't be happening. It's not fair. We feel that the universe has violated some fundamental rule, that our life has been singled out for an unjust punishment. But when we have deeply contemplated the universal law of anicca, we understand that change, decay, and dissolution are not exceptions. They are the rule. It is in the very nature of all compounded things, from stars to teacups to human body, to arise, exist for a time, and then pass away. This does not make the loss any less painful, but it can remove the torturous layer of shock and cosmic injustice. It helps us to see the situation not as a personal attack, but as the heartbreaking yet natural unfolding of an impersonal and universal law. Second, this wisdom helps to soften the sharp edges of regret. When someone dies, our minds often become a torture chamber of if-onlys. If only I had said, I love you one more time. If only I had made that phone call. If only I had been a better son, or mother, or friend. While some reflection on our past actions is natural, obsessive regret is a second arrow of the most painful kind. The understanding that we, too, are impermanent, ever-changing processes helps us to practice self-compassion. The person you were last year, or even yesterday, is not the person you are today. You always acted from the level of wisdom and understanding you possessed at that particular time. To judge your past self by your present understanding is a form of cruelty. Acceptance allows us to forgive ourselves for not being perfect, and to focus on the love that was present, however imperfectly it was expressed. Third, this wisdom provides a wider, more compassionate context for our pain. The intense suffering of grief can be incredibly isolating. It can feel as if a wall has dropped between you and the rest of the world, that no one could possibly understand the depth of your sorrow. But as Kisa Gotami discovered on her journey for the mustard seed, the experience of loss is the great connector. It is the thread that binds all of humanity together. When you grieve, you are not alone. You are joining a vast and ancient fellowship of every being that has ever loved and lost. Your personal tears are falling into a great, shared river of sorrow. To realize this does not erase your pain, but it can make it feel less lonely, more sacred, and more profoundly human. Furthermore, we can practice a deep contemplation on the nature of continuity. The great master Thich Nhat Hanh taught that nothing is ever truly born and nothing ever truly dies. There is only transformation. He would ask us to look at a cloud. A cloud can never die. It can transform into rain, or snow, or mist. The rain can fall into a river, be drunk by a plant, which is then eaten by an animal, and the water of the cloud continues in these new forms. It has not vanished. Its form has changed. We can apply this same contemplation to a person we have lost. A person is not merely the physical body that has ceased to function. A person is a magnificent manifestation of countless causes and conditions. When they are gone, do they truly vanish, or do they continue? They continue in the memories we hold in our hearts. They continue in the lessons they taught us, in the way they shaped our values and our character. They continue in the love we still feel for them, a love that is a living energy within us. If they had children, they continue in their DNA, in their smile, in their mannerisms. The energy of their life has not been extinguished. It has been redistributed back into the great web of interbeing. To look for our loved one in this way, not in the grave, but in the here and now, in our own hearts, in the world around us, is a powerful practice. It shifts our focus from an agonizing sense of absence to a gentle and continuous sense of presence in a new form. When the Buddha's two chief disciples, Sariputta and Moggallana, passed away, his attendant Ananda was stricken with grief. The Buddha, seeing his sorrow, did not offer false comfort. Instead, he gently reminded him of the truth they had studied together. Ananda, he said, have I not taught you that it is the very nature of all things that are dear and beloved to us that we must be separated from them, that they must change and become otherwise? How could it be that what is born, what is brought into being, what is compounded, should not be subject to dissolution? He compared the community of monks to a great, mighty tree, and said that it was as if two of its largest branches had broken off. He fully acknowledged the magnitude of the loss, but his own refuge, he reminded Ananda, was not in people, who are impermanent, but in the Dharma, the truth itself, which is a timeless and unshakable refuge. Navigating a great loss is perhaps the most difficult practice we will ever undertake. The wisdom of impermanence does not offer a bypass around the landscape of sorrow. It offers a compass to guide us through it. It allows us to honor our love by honoring our grief, to feel our pain without being destroyed by it, and to eventually find our footing on a new shore. The wound of a great loss may never completely disappear, but with time and with practice, it can cease to be an open, weeping wound and become a place of deep strength, profound empathy, and a constant, powerful reminder to live this one, precious, fleeting life with more courage, more meaning, and more love. To companion another through the great storm of their final illness and death inevitably forces us to look toward our own shore. The contemplation of the loss of others is the final preparation for contemplating the greatest and most intimate loss of all, our own mortality. Having walked through the valley of grief and learned to hold the sorrow of losing others with a compassionate heart, we arrive at the final and most profound contemplation on the path of impermanence. We must now turn our gaze from the loss of others to the inevitable loss of our own self. We must learn to face the reality of our own death. In our modern culture, this is the ultimate taboo. Death is treated as a medical failure, a grim secret to be hidden away in hospitals and spoken of only in hushed euphemisms. We are taught to fear it, to deny it, and to distract ourselves from its existence with a frantic pursuit of youth, wealth, and entertainment. But in this denial, we create a great and powerful shadow that haunts our lives, feeding a deep background anxiety. The wisdom traditions of the world teach us the very opposite. They teach that the conscious, gentle, and regular contemplation of our own mortality is not a morbid or depressing practice. It is, in fact, the most life-affirming, clarifying, and liberating practice we can ever undertake. It is the key that unlocks a life of meaning, purpose, and profound joy. This practice is known as Maranasati, death awareness. To begin this practice, we must first deconstruct our fear. The fear of death is not a single, monolithic entity. It is a complex bundle of interconnected fears. First, there is the fear of the unknown. What happens when the breath stops? Is there a void? Is there annihilation? Is there another existence? The thinking mind cannot penetrate this mystery, and its inability to know or control what comes next is a source of deep terror. Second, there is the fear of loss. This is the fear of leaving behind everyone and everything we have ever loved. It is the sorrow of no longer being able to experience the world, to see a sunrise, to taste food, to hear music, to feel the warmth of the sun. It is the ultimate separation. Third, there is the fear of the dying process itself. We fear pain, helplessness, the loss of our dignity, and becoming a burden on others. These are all valid and understandable human fears. But beneath all of these, there is often a deeper, more poignant fear. For many of us, the primary fear of death is actually the fear of an unlived life. It is the fear of arriving at the end and realizing, with a sense of crushing regret, that we never truly showed up for our own existence. It is the fear that we were so busy preparing for the future, worrying about the past, and chasing distractions, that we missed the main event. It is the terror of having been a guest at a magnificent banquet, but never having truly tasted the food. When we look deeply, we find that the fear of death and the fear of life are two sides of the same coin. The more we shrink from life, the more we fear its end. The more we learn to live fully, the less power death holds over us. The practice of Maranasati is designed to use the reality of death as a lens to bring our life into sharp focus. One of the most ancient and gentle ways to begin is through the practice of the 5 daily recollections. This is a simple reflection to be done each day. First, I am of the nature to grow old. There is no way to escape growing old. Second, I am of the nature to have ill health. There is no way to escape ill health. Third, I am of the nature to die. There is no way to escape death. Fourth, all that is dear to me and everyone I love are of the nature to change. There is no way to escape being separated from them. And fifth, my actions are my only true belongings. I cannot escape the consequences of my actions. My actions are the ground upon which I stand. To recite these is not to be pessimistic. It is to gently, repeatedly, introduce a dose of reality into our minds, which are so prone to fantasy. It softens our resistance, cultivates acceptance, and reminds us of what truly matters. From this foundation, we can move into a more direct contemplation. Take a few moments to find a quiet space. Close your eyes, and with as much sincerity as you can, imagine that you have learned, with calm and undeniable certainty, that you have only one more day to live. This is not a day of sickness or pain, but simply your last 24 hours of conscious existence. Now, ask yourself, what would immediately become unimportant? The petty grudges you are holding, the anxieties about your social status, the worries about your career advancement, the desire for more possessions. Would any of these things still hold any power over you? You would see them for the trivial distractions they are. They would fall away like dead leaves from a tree. Now ask yourself the more important question. What would become supremely important? Would you finally make that phone call to someone you love, to say the things that have been left unsaid? Would you forgive someone who has hurt you, not for their sake, but to unburden your own heart? Would you take a walk outside and for the first time, truly see the intricate patterns on a leaf, truly feel the sensation of the wind on your skin, truly hear the song of a bird? Would you listen with your whole being to the voice of your partner or your child? This contemplation is the ultimate tool for clarifying your values. Death becomes our most trusted advisor. It strips away all that is non-essential and reveals the luminous core of what gives our life meaning: love, connection, presence, and simple acts of kindness. There is a famous Zen teaching that says, "You must die while you are still alive." This sounds like a strange and frightening paradox, but it holds the secret to a liberated life. It does not mean physical death. It means the practice of letting the ego, the small, constricted, and fearful self, die every single day. You can practice this small death right now. Can you let go of your need to be right in a conversation? That is a small death. Can you let go of a past failure that you have been replaying in your mind? That is a small death. Can you let go of a cherished opinion when presented with new evidence? That is a small death. Can you let go of the you of yesterday, with all its accomplishments and regrets, and meet this new day afresh? Each act of letting go is a rehearsal for the final letting go. By practicing these daily deaths of the ego, we become skilled in the art of release. The final, great death then becomes less of a terrifying cliff edge and more like the natural continuation of a process we have been practicing all along. This brings us to a deeper understanding of what death actually is. Our fear is rooted in the idea of annihilation, that the I we have known will be utterly extinguished. But this fear is based on the illusion that there is a solid, separate thing to be annihilated in the first place. We have already seen that the body is just a temporary gathering of universal elements. When it dies, these elements, the earth, water, fire, and air, simply return to the great cycles of nature. Nothing is lost. Think of a single leaf on a great tree. It has its leaf life. It basks in the sun. It dances in the wind. In the autumn, it turns a brilliant color, lets go of the branch, and falls to the ground. Does the leaf die, or does it transform? It decomposes, becoming rich humus that nourishes the soil, feeding the very tree from which it fell. Its life continues in the life of the whole. Its form has changed, but its essence has been returned. Our physical death is like this. We cease to be this individual wave, and we merge back into the great ocean of being. And what of the self, the consciousness? If we have investigated and seen that there is no fixed, unchanging entity within us, then what is it that fears being annihilated? What dies is the process, the temporary collection of body and mind. The fear of death is the ego's fear of its own dissolution. But we have seen that this ego is a construct, an illusion. When you truly see, in your bones, that there is no separate self, the fear of its destruction loses its terrifying grip. There is no one there to be annihilated. There is only the ceaseless, selfless flow of life, constantly changing form. This is the ultimate secret. The most effective antidote to the fear of death is not a belief in an afterlife or a desperate search for a fountain of youth. The most effective antidote to the fear of death is to live a full life. A life lived without reservation. A life in which you love with your whole heart, feel your sorrows with your whole heart, and show up for the raw, vibrant, beautiful, and painful reality of each present moment. When you live this way, you are no longer hoarding your moments, saving them for a future that may never come. You are spending them, generously and completely, on the here and now. The person who has truly lived is not afraid to die, for they know that nothing has been wasted. The regular, gentle contemplation of your own mortality is not a morbid practice. It is death's great gift to the living. It is the silent, ever-present teacher who reminds us not to squander our precious time. It is the dark, rich soil from which a truly vibrant, meaningful, and courageous life can grow. By turning to face death, we have not found a source of fear, but the very key that unlocks the door to a joyful and liberated life. Death is not the opposite of life. It is the border that gives life its beautiful, poignant shape. This fearless embrace of our total, transient existence, including its end, unlocks a new kind of happiness. It is not the fleeting pleasure of getting what we want, but a deep, abiding joy that is found within the very flow of impermanence. Let us now explore this quiet and resilient joy. Having journeyed to the very edge of existence, having learned to face the profound reality of our own mortality, we may now ask, what is the purpose of such a demanding and honest path? If all is impermanent, if the self is a fleeting process, if loss is inevitable, where is the happiness in all of this? We have been taught our whole lives that the purpose of life is the pursuit of happiness. But this deep, contemplative journey reveals that we must first redefine what happiness truly is. The happiness that this path leads to is not the frantic, fragile pleasure we are accustomed to chasing. It is a quiet, resilient, and profound state of well-being that arises not from getting what we want, but from fundamentally changing our relationship with reality itself. It is the quiet joy that blossoms in a heart that has made peace with impermanence. First, we must clearly distinguish between pleasure and joy. What our culture typically calls happiness is, in fact, a relentless hunt for pleasure. Pleasure is a sensation that is dependent on external conditions. It arises when our senses are stimulated in a way our mind judges as agreeable. The taste of a sweet dessert, the thrill of a fast car, the sound of applause, the distraction of an entertaining movie, the validation of a compliment, these are all sources of pleasure. And because they feel good, we dedicate our lives to arranging and rearranging the external world in an attempt to maximize these experiences. But this strategy is fundamentally flawed and destined for frustration, for three reasons. First, as we have seen with every topic we have explored, all conditions are impermanent. The delicious meal ends, the new car gets old, the applause fades, the movie finishes. Because pleasure is dependent on these fleeting conditions, it is itself inherently fleeting. This guarantees that a life spent chasing pleasure is a life of constant striving, a life on a hedonic treadmill, where we need ever-increasing doses of stimulation just to feel the same level of satisfaction. Second, this pursuit makes our happiness dangerously dependent on things outside of our control. Our peace of mind becomes a puppet, and the strings are held by the stock market, by other people's opinions, by our state of health, by sheer luck. When circumstances are favorable, we feel happy. When they are not, we feel miserable. We have outsourced our well-being to the fickle whims of the world. Third, the frantic chase for pleasure creates a deep fear of its opposite, pain. The more we structure our lives around seeking comfort and pleasant sensations, the more terrified we become of discomfort, difficulty, and pain. Our world shrinks, and we live in a state of anxious avoidance, constantly trying to insulate ourselves from the full, vibrant, and often challenging spectrum of human experience. The path of wisdom offers a radically different proposition. It invites us to discover a form of happiness that is not dependent on pleasure. In the ancient texts, this is known as sukha. While often translated as happiness, its meaning is closer to a deep sense of well-being, contentment, flourishing, and ease. Sukha is not something we get from the outside. It is an inner quality of the mind that emerges when we remove the obstacles that have been covering it up. It is the natural state of a mind that is no longer at war with itself or with the world. This quiet joy is the direct byproduct of all the practices we have been exploring. It is the joy of non-resistance. The constant fight against reality, resisting what is, craving what isn't, is incredibly draining. It creates a state of chronic mental and physical tension. When, through the practice of acceptance, we learn to let go of this struggle, an enormous amount of energy is liberated. The simple absence of this inner friction, this feeling of ease and flow, is a profound form of joy. It is the relief of finally putting down a heavy, invisible burden you have been carrying your entire life. It is the joy of simplicity. When the mind is no longer driven by the unquenchable thirst of tanha, it can find deep satisfaction in the simple realities of the present moment. We no longer need dramatic or intense stimuli to feel alive. A simple cup of tea, savored mindfully, can become an ocean of pleasure. The feeling of the sun on your skin, the sound of rain on the roof, the quiet rhythm of your own breathing, these ordinary, ever-present experiences become sources of deep contentment. You discover that you already have everything you need to be happy, right here and now. You were just too busy chasing other things to notice. It is the joy of a clear and spacious mind. When, through mindfulness, we learn to observe our thoughts without being entangled in them, the mind becomes like a calm, clear sky. The storms of anxiety and the fog of regret may still pass through, but we are no longer lost in them. We rest in the silent, aware space behind the thoughts. This inner silence, this freedom from the tyranny of compulsive thinking, is a state of profound peace and stability, and it is the joy of connection. When, through the wisdom of no self and compassion, we see through the illusion that we are separate, isolated beings, a feeling of deep belonging arises. We feel our connection to other people, to the natural world, to the entire web of life. The painful ache of loneliness dissolves, replaced by the warmth of kinship. This feeling of being an integral part of a magnificent whole is a deep and nourishing wellspring of joy. We can think of this quiet joy using the metaphor of a deep lake. The surface of the lake represents the changing conditions of our daily lives. Sometimes the sun shines and the surface is calm and reflective. These are the pleasant moments. Sometimes the wind blows and storms rage, creating turbulent waves. These are the difficult moments of pain and loss. A life spent chasing pleasure is like being in a small boat, tossed about on these surface waves, completely at the mercy of the weather. But sukha, this quiet joy, is like the deep, still water at the bottom of the lake. Down in the depths, it is always silent, peaceful, and undisturbed, regardless of the chaos on the surface. The practices of mindfulness, acceptance, and wisdom are the methods for learning how to access this inner depth. They teach us to find our true refuge, not in the fleeting conditions of the surface, but in the unshakable peace of our own deepest nature. This joy does not feel like a giddy, euphoric high. It is far more subtle, stable, and sustainable. It is the quiet feeling of contentment you might experience while mindfully washing the dishes. It is the gentle warmth that spreads through your chest when you feel a moment of genuine gratitude. It is the quiet awe you might feel while watching a spider meticulously spin its web. It is the resilient peace that comes from being able to sit with your own sadness without being consumed by it. It is a happiness that is found not in escaping from the ordinary, but by diving more deeply into it. This is the fundamental difference. Pleasure depends on getting something from the outside world. Quiet joy, or sukha, arises from a quality of presence and appreciation you bring to the world. Pleasure is conditional. Joy is unconditional. And because this quiet joy is not based on any particular person, object, status, or event, it has a quality that pleasure can never have. It cannot be taken away from you. It is a portable refuge, an inner wellspring of peace that you carry within your own heart, no matter where you go or what circumstances you face. It is the profound and lasting peace that comes from finally making friends with reality. This quiet, resilient joy is not the final destination of the path. Rather, it is the nourishing ground from which the highest human potential can grow. It provides the stability and clarity needed to cultivate the supreme faculty of the mind, the one that ties all these threads of impermanence, no self, compassion, and acceptance into a single, coherent, and luminous whole. This is the faculty of wisdom, or prajna, the journey we have undertaken together through the shifting sands of impermanence, the empty nature of the self, the open heart of compassion, and the quiet acceptance of what leads us to the emergence of a new human faculty. All of these streams of understanding, when they converge, flow into the great river of wisdom. In Sanskrit, this is prajna. This wisdom is the luminous culmination of our practice. It is the quiet joy we have discovered, now infused with a deep and penetrating insight. It is the ultimate purpose of our path, not as a final destination, but as a trustworthy inner compass to guide us through the remainder of our lives. It is essential to understand that this wisdom is not the same as knowledge. Our world places a great premium on knowledge, the accumulation of facts, figures, and concepts. One could read every book ever written on Buddhist philosophy, memorize every list and every teaching, and possess an encyclopedic knowledge of the path. But this would not be wisdom. Knowledge is knowing the names of all the ingredients in a recipe and memorizing the steps for preparation. Wisdom is the direct, undeniable, and nourishing taste of the food itself. Knowledge is studying a map of a foreign country. Wisdom is the feeling of that country's soil under your feet, the scent of its air in your lungs. The entire journey we have taken is not meant to fill your head with more knowledge, but to clear the dust from the lens of your own perception, so that you may see the nature of reality directly for yourself. The content of this wisdom, the landscape that becomes visible through this clear lens, is a direct, embodied understanding of what are known as the three marks of existence. These are the universal signatures present in all of life's phenomena. The first, as we have explored at length, is anicca, or impermanence. Wisdom is not just the intellectual agreement that things change. It is the direct perception of this flow in every moment. It is seeing the thought arise and dissolve, feeling the sensation flicker and fade, and knowing in your bones that this entire universe is a shimmering, ceaseless dance of transformation. The second mark is dukkha, or unsatisfactoriness. Wisdom sees, with unshakable clarity, the mechanism of our own suffering. It watches in real time as the mind clings to a pleasant experience or resists an unpleasant one, and it sees the tension, friction, and discontent that this clinging and resistance immediately create. It sees the second arrow being notched in the bow of our reactivity, and because it sees it so clearly, it is able to let the arrow drop before it is fired. The third mark is anatta, or no self. Wisdom sees through the powerful illusion of a solid, separate, unchanging me at the center of our experience. It perceives our being not as a noun, but as a verba, selfless, interconnected process of body, thoughts, and feelings, all arising and passing away according to causes and conditions. Prajna is the simultaneous, intuitive seeing of all three of these truths at once. It sees that a selfless process, anatta, is unfolding impermanently, anicca, and that any attempt to grasp onto any part of this flow and call it me or mine is a direct and immediate cause of suffering, dukkha. This is not a depressing conclusion. It is the ultimate diagnosis of our dis-ease, a diagnosis that contains within it the very prescription for our freedom. Once this wisdom begins to take root, it functions as a reliable inner compass. For a person operating without wisdom, life is navigated by a complex and often contradictory set of external rules and internal desires. Their choices are governed by the ego's constant, anxious questions. What's in it for me? What will bring me the most pleasure? What will make me look good in the eyes of others? How can I avoid pain and difficulty? This way of navigating is exhausting and inevitably leads to conflict and confusion. The person in whom wisdom is awakening begins to navigate by a completely different set of questions. When faced with a difficult choice, the inner compass of prajna aligns itself with a new, true north. It asks, what action would be in harmony with the truth of impermanence? This question leads to choices of letting go, of non-attachment, of generosity. It asks, what action will most likely reduce suffering and create well-being for myself and for all the other beings involved in this situation? This is the question of compassion, and it asks, Is this action coming from a place of defending a fragile ego, or from a place of spaciousness and connection? This is the question of no self. The answers to these questions do not always come from a laborious, analytical thought process. As wisdom deepens, the response becomes more and more intuitive, spontaneous, and skillful. It is the effortless action, or wu wei, that we spoke of earlier. Because you see the situation with such clarity, the appropriate response simply arises, free from the friction and second-guessing of the ego. You act with the grace and confidence of a master craftsman, whose hands seem to know exactly what to do without the need for conscious thought. This wisdom does not give you a rigid rule book for life. It gives you the skill and flexibility to dance with whatever music life plays. There is a famous Zen story that perfectly illustrates the relationship between the teachings and wisdom itself. A master is trying to show his students the full moon. He points his finger at the moon and says, "There, look at the magnificent moon." But the students, being very diligent, become fascinated with the master's finger. They study its length, its angle, the lines on its knuckles. They write learned commentaries on the pointing finger. They argue about the proper way to point one's finger. In their obsessive focus on the finger, they completely miss the breathtaking beauty of the moon itself. In this story, the moon represents the ultimate truth, the direct, unmediated experience of reality as it is. It is enlightenment, it is freedom, it is wisdom. The finger represents all the teachings, all the words, all the concepts and practices, including every word you are hearing now. The teachings are absolutely essential. Without the finger, we might not know where to look, but they are only a pointer. They are not the moon itself. To get stuck on the words, to mistake the concept of impermanence for the direct seeing of it, to worship the methods and the teachers, is to spend your life staring at the finger. Prajna, or wisdom, is the moment you finally lift your gaze from the pointing finger and see the moon for yourself. It is your own direct, personal, and undeniable experience of the truth. And once you have seen the moon, you no longer need the finger. You can say thank you to it, and then navigate by the moon's own light. This wisdom is not some mystical power reserved for saints and sages in distant caves. It is the natural, luminous intelligence of your own mind, once it has been polished free of the dust of delusion and the grime of clinging. It is the seamless integration of clear seeing and a kind heart. It is the inner compass that allows you to navigate the ever-changing river of your life, not with fear and struggle, but with grace, skill, and a quiet, unshakable confidence. It does not promise a life free from storms, but it guarantees that you will have the inner resources to meet any storm with a peaceful heart and a clear mind. This profound wisdom, this inner compass, cannot remain a conceptual understanding or a peak experience that happens only during meditation. For it to be truly transformative, it must be woven into the very fabric of our being. It must inform every breath, every step, every interaction. The final stage of our journey, therefore, is to explore how to integrate this wisdom into the messy, beautiful, and ordinary reality of our daily lives. We have now traveled a great distance on this inner journey. We have stood before the truth of impermanence. We have investigated the elusive nature of the self. We have opened our hearts to compassion, and we have calibrated our inner compass with the quiet light of wisdom. We have, in essence, studied the map of the territory of a liberated life. But a map, no matter how accurate or beautiful, is not the territory itself. The most crucial and most rewarding stage of the journey now begins, the process of integration. How do we take these profound insights from the meditation cushion, from the quiet moments of contemplation, and weave them into the messy, complicated, beautiful, and often chaotic fabric of our daily lives? How do we live this wisdom in the office, in the morning traffic, during a difficult conversation with a loved one? The goal is to close the gap between our meditation self and our daily life self, until the peace and clarity we touch in silence becomes the very ground upon which we walk through the world. This is the practice of learning how to truly sleep in the embrace of impermanence day, to find our deepest rest not by retreating from life, but by inhabiting it fully, with an open and fearless heart. This integration is not a mysterious process. It is a practical one, supported by tangible habits and disciplines. We can think of it as building and maintaining our practice with four essential pillars. The first and most important pillar is a formal daily practice. This is the non-negotiable act of setting aside a small amount of time each day, even just 10 or 15 minutes, to sit in stillness and silence. This is the time when we tune the instrument of our mind. To attempt to live mindfully without a formal practice is like an orchestra trying to play a symphony without ever tuning their instruments. The result will be discordant and chaotic. Many resistances will arise to this simple discipline. The mind will say, "I don't have time." But the truth is, the more you feel you don't have time for 10 minutes of stillness, the more you desperately need an hour. The mind will say, "I'm not good at it. My thoughts are too busy." But this is like saying you are too sick to take medicine. A busy mind is not a sign of failure. It is the very condition the practice is designed to work with. There is no such thing as a bad meditation. There is only the practice of wandering, noticing that you have wandered, and gently, kindly, returning. Each return is a victory. This daily sitting is your anchor. It is the sacred time when you reconnect with your deepest intentions and recalibrate your inner compass, providing the stability you will need to navigate the rest of your day. You can vary the focus of this practice. Some days, simply rest with the breath. On other days, you might gently hold an intention of self-compassion or actively contemplate the truth of impermanence, watching the endless stream of thoughts and sensations arise and pass away. This formal practice is the foundation upon which everything else is built. The second pillar is the informal practice, which is the art of weaving moments of awareness into the ordinary flow of your day. The goal here is to sprinkle your day with mindfulness bells routine events that can act as triggers to bring you back to the present moment. For example, you can make a resolution that every time your phone rings, you will take one conscious breath before answering. Every time you walk through a doorway, you can use that as a cue to feel the sensation of your feet on the floor. When you find yourself waiting in a grocery line, at a red light, for a computer to boot up instead of automatically reaching for your phone to fill the space, you can use that as a precious opportunity to simply be. Feel your breath. Notice the sounds around you. Feel the air on your skin. These are micro hits of presence that, over time, accumulate and change the entire texture of your life. When you feel overwhelmed by anxiety or lost in a thought storm, you can use the simple practice of sensory grounding. Pause and mentally name 5 things you can see in your immediate environment. Then, 4 things you can physically feel. Then, 3 things you can hear. Then, 2 things you can smell. And finally, 1 thing you can taste. This simple exercise powerfully yanks your awareness out of the abstract and often terrifying world of anxious thought and anchors it firmly in the safe harbor of direct, present-moment sensory reality. The third pillar is the contemplative practice, which involves consciously shaping the direction of your mind and heart at the beginning and end of each day. When you wake up, before you reach for your phone or get swept up in the day's agenda, take just 2 minutes to sit quietly and set a simple, heartfelt intention. It might be, "Today, may I meet whatever comes with patience," or "Today, may I remember to be kind to myself," or "Today, may I look for the good in others." This act is like setting the rudder of a ship before it leaves the harbor. It doesn't guarantee you won't hit storms, but it provides a clear direction to guide your responses throughout the day. Even more powerful is the practice of an evening reflection and release. Before you sleep, take a few minutes to gently review the day that has passed. Acknowledge any moments of joy, connection, or accomplishment with a feeling of gratitude. Acknowledge any moments of difficulty, conflict, or personal failure, not with harsh judgment, but with the gentle light of self-compassion, seeing them as opportunities for learning. And then comes the most important step. Consciously let the entire day go. Visualize placing the day's events in a small boat and pushing it out to sea. Release it completely. Do not carry the successes or failures of today into the fresh, new world of tomorrow. This is the daily practice of the small death we spoke of earlier. It is a profound act of non-clinging that allows you to meet each new morning with a clean slate and a rested heart. The fourth pillar is the environmental practice, which means consciously shaping your physical and digital surroundings to support your practice. Your environment is constantly sending you messages. You can choose what those messages are. Place a few simple objects in your home or office to serve as silent, beautiful reminders of the Dharma. A single flower in a small vase is a living teacher of impermanence. You can watch it bloom, flourish, and gracefully fade over a few days. A smooth gray stone from a river can remind you of the power of acceptance and flow. A small bell can be rung occasionally, not as a command, but as a gentle invitation for everyone in the home to pause and take one conscious breath together. You can also curate your digital environment. Notice how much of your media consumption is designed to create feelings of craving, envy, and inadequacy. You can choose to unfollow accounts that make you feel worse about yourself, and instead follow those that inspire wisdom and kindness. You can practice digital Sabbaths, designated times when all screens are turned off, allowing your mind to rest and your real-life connections to deepen. In a world of constant distraction, creating sanctuaries of simplicity and intention is a radical act of self-care. All of these practices, the formal and informal, the contemplative and environmental, are ways of training ourselves to live in the present moment. And sometimes, the present moment is one of great peril. There is a classic Zen story that encapsulates this ultimate integration more powerfully than any other. A man is walking through the mountains when he is suddenly chased by a ferocious tiger. He runs as fast as he can until he reaches the edge of a cliff. With no other choice, he grabs onto a thick vine hanging over the edge and swings himself down. As he dangles there, clinging for his life, he looks down and sees another tiger on the ground below, looking up at him with hungry eyes. His situation seems hopeless. Then, he looks up at the vine he is holding onto and sees two mice, one white and one black, steadily gnawing away at its base. He knows that his time is literally running out. The white mouse of day and the black mouse of night are eating away at the very thread of his life. In this moment of ultimate crisis, trapped between the past he is fleeing from and the future that awaits him, with the very substance of his life dissolving, he happens to notice something. Growing from a small crevice in the cliff face, just within his reach, is a single wild strawberry, glowing red in the sunlight. He looks at the tiger below, he looks at the mice above, and then he looks at the strawberry. With his free hand, he gently plucks the strawberry, puts it in his mouth, and savors it. And the thought that arises in his mind is simply this: how delicious this strawberry is. This man is all of us. We are all hanging on a fragile vine, pursued by our past and facing an uncertain future, while the mice of time nibble away at our life. We are all living in a state of existential peril, but in every single moment, no matter how precarious, there is a strawberry. There is a simple, tangible, sensory reality that is available to us. A taste, a sight, a sound, a breath. The man's enlightenment, his profound freedom, was his ability to fully inhabit the present moment, to completely taste the sweetness of the strawberry, without being mentally consumed by the terror of his situation. This is the culmination of our practice. This is what it means to find our peace, not by escaping from life, an act which is impossible, but by living it completely, moment by terrifying, beautiful moment. This is the true meaning of sanctuary. We often think of sanctuary as a physical place of retreat, a haven we go to from the world. But this path teaches us that true sanctuary is not a place we can go to, but a way we can be. It is the sanctuary of a mind that has found its home in the present moment. To sleep in the embrace of impermanence is to find this sanctuary. It is the deep and profound rest that comes when we finally stop struggling against the current of life. It is like an exhausted swimmer who has been fighting a river, and at last, simply flips over onto their back and allows the current to carry them. It is the discovery that the force we were fighting is the very same force that can hold us up and carry us home. It is finding our ultimate security in the radical acceptance of our own insecurity. It is finding stability in the very heart of change. This integration is not a linear path with a graduation day. It is a spiral, a lifelong practice of forgetting and remembering, of getting caught and gently freeing ourselves over and over again. The beautiful truth is that you have everything you need to begin right now. This profound integration, this ability to rest in the flow, changes our entire understanding of what we are looking for. We realize that the peace we have been seeking is not a distant destination we must strive to reach. We discover that peace is not the end of the road. Peace is the road itself. we have now traveled through the vast and varied landscapes of the human experience. We have journeyed together through the truth of impermanence, the illusion of the self, the fire of craving, the power of compassion, and the wisdom of acceptance. We began this journey with a quiet and perhaps unspoken hope, the hope of finding peace. We imagined peace as a final destination, a serene and tranquil harbor where the storms of life could no longer reach us, a high mountain peak above the clouds of our confusion and pain. And now, having traveled so far, we arrive at the final and most liberating realization of all. We were searching for something that was never lost. The peace we have been seeking is not a destination we must struggle to arrive at. Peace is the very path itself, and the way we have learned to walk it. For most of our lives, the search for peace is just another form of restless striving. It becomes another goal for the ego to achieve, another item to tick off our spiritual checklist. We meditate and then ask ourselves, am I peaceful yet? We try to be compassionate and then wonder, have I accumulated enough good karma to be at peace? We treat peace as a fragile treasure hidden somewhere outside of ourselves, and this very search, this very striving, becomes a source of subtle, chronic tension. It is based on the mistaken belief that we are somehow broken, deficient, and lacking, and that we must do something or acquire something to become whole and find peace. This entire journey has been about unwinding that fundamental mistake. It has not been a process of building something new, but a process of demolishing the walls that have obscured the peace that is our natural birthright. Imagine your mind as a clear, blue sky. This sky is naturally peaceful, spacious, and serene. But throughout your life, you have allowed it to become cluttered with the storm clouds of fearful thoughts, the fog of delusion, and the turbulent winds of craving and aversion. You have become so identified with the storm that you have forgotten the sky. The spiritual path is not the act of trying to create a blue sky. It is the patient, compassionate work of allowing the clouds to disperse, of letting the winds die down, so that the sky that has been there all along can reveal itself. Peace is not an achievement, it is an unveiling. This understanding requires us to redefine peace itself. The conventional idea of peace is the peace of the warrior. It is the peace that comes after the battle has been won. It is the quiet sigh of relief when a difficult project is finally finished, when a painful conflict is resolved, when all the problems have been solved and all the bills have been paid. This peace is wonderful, but it is conditional, fragile, and always temporary, because the nature of life is that there will always be another battle, another project, another problem. To depend on this kind of peace is to be forever riding a roller coaster, your inner state held hostage by the endless cycle of struggle and temporary relief. The path of wisdom leads us to the peace of the sage. This is a peace that can exist in the midst of the storm. It is the unshakable equanimity that has learned to hold both joy and sorrow, success and failure, pleasure and pain, with an open and untroubled heart. It is the profound stillness of the deep lake, which remains silent and undisturbed even when a storm rages on its surface. It is the calm, focused heart of the tightrope walker, who finds their balance not by denying the existence of the abyss below, but by being fully present with it. The goal of our practice is not to create a life free of problems, which is an impossible fantasy. The goal is to cultivate an inner state of being that is free from being dominated by our problems. This is the only true and lasting freedom. When we grasp this, we realize that the path is the destination. There is no graduation day from life. There is no final moment when we receive a certificate of enlightenment and are then immune to all future challenges. The waves of impermanence will never stop rolling in. We will continue to grow old. We will get sick. We will face disappointments. We will lose people we love. To hope for a waveless ocean is the final and most subtle illusion to be surrendered. What this path has given us is not a ticket to a mythical waveless shore. It has given us something far more valuable. It has given us a sturdy boat, which is our deep understanding of the nature of reality. It has given us a reliable compass, which is the clear seeing of wisdom. It has given us a powerful anchor, which is the practice of mindfulness. And it has given us the skill to navigate, which is our capacity for compassion and acceptance. We are no longer helpless swimmers, thrashing about in the waves, swallowing water and crying out for help. We have become skilled mariners, We can respect the power of the ocean, but we no longer have to fear it. We can ride its swells, navigate its currents, and even, at times, find joy in its wild and untamable energy. And from this perspective, every single moment of practice becomes a moment of arrival. The moment you catch your mind lost in a storm of anxious thought and you gently guide it back to the anchor of your breath, that is a moment of peace. The moment a wave of sadness washes over you, and instead of fighting it, you allow it to be there with compassionate acceptance. That is a moment of peace. The moment you feel the impulse to utter a harsh, judgmental word, and you choose instead to hold it in silence or offer a word of kindness, that is a moment of peace. We stop looking for peace in some distant future, and we discover it in the quality of our attention, in the courageous opening of our heart, right here and now. Peace is not at the end of the road. Peace is the road, walked one mindful, compassionate step at a time. In the tradition of Zen Buddhism, there is a powerful symbol called the Enso, or the Zen circle. It is drawn with a single, fluid, expressive brushstroke, completed in one breath. An Enso is never a mathematically perfect circle. There are often drips, smudges, and variations in the thickness of the ink. It is a celebration of imperfection. Furthermore, the circle is often left slightly open, not fully closed. This is a perfect metaphor for the peace we have been describing. It is a peace found not in achieving a state of flawless, static perfection, but in embracing our beautiful, messy, imperfect, and ever-evolving human lives. The opening in the circle represents the fact that our journey is never finished, that we are always open to the next moment, to continued growth, to the endless possibilities of life. The single brushstroke, completed in one breath, represents the wholeness and completeness that can be found in this very moment, just as it is. The great, frantic search is over, because we have realized that the seeking itself was the source of our disquiet. The desperate striving to reach a final destination was the very thing that prevented us from appreciating the beauty of the journey. The path does not end, but our anxious, fearful striving can. We can finally stop looking over the horizon for something better, something more, something different from what is right here. We can relax, we can exhale, we can come home to ourselves, a home that was never truly lost, only momentarily overlooked. It is the profound peace of finally being okay with what is. This realization, this homecoming, brings our long exploration to a close. We began by seeking a refuge from the storms of life, and we have found it not on some distant, peaceful shore, but in the wise and loving heart of the storm itself. Let us now gather the wisdom of this journey into a final, parting reflection. We began our long journey together on a vast and quiet shore, trying to build a perfect castle of sand at the very edge of the ocean. We lived in fear of the tide, believing that happiness lay in the strength and permanence of our fortress. We believed we were the castle. On this journey, we have learned to see differently. We turned our gaze toward the ocean and saw that its changing tides were not a threat, but the very pulse of life itself, the universal law of impermanence. We then looked closely at our castle and saw that it was not solid, but was itself just a temporary gathering of sand, a fleeting collection of thoughts, feelings, and forms that we had mistakenly labeled as me. We learned to stop fighting the waves, to unclench the fist of our resistance, and to meet reality with the open hand of acceptance. And in doing so, the ocean ceased to be an enemy and became a source of wonder, opening our hearts to gratitude for its wild beauty. This open heart learned to feel the currents of compassion that connect us all, and with the clear sight of wisdom, we finally learned not just to fear the ocean, but to navigate its currents with grace and skill. And so we arrive at the simple, profound, and liberating truth that has been waiting for us all along. The peace we were seeking was never on some distant, mythical island free from waves. No such place exists. The only true and lasting peace, the quiet and unshakable peace of the deep lake, is the one we have discovered within ourselves. It is the inner spaciousness that can hold the entire, magnificent, and unpredictable weather of our lives. The sunshine and the storms, the calm and the chaos. The ultimate stability is not found in a world that never changes, but in a mind that has learned to be at home with change. Peace is not a destination at which you finally arrive, tired and weary from your travels. Peace is the way you choose to travel, with each mindful step, with each compassionate breath. You do not need to acquire anything more or become someone other than who you are to live from this place of peace. The tools have been in your possession all along. They are in the simple anchor of your breath, waiting for you in any moment of distress. They are in your innate capacity for kindness, both to yourself and to others. They are in the simple, revolutionary power to notice a thought without having to become it. The entire universe, in all its profound wisdom and beauty, is revealing itself to you in this very moment. Your only task is to be present for it. Trust the flow. Rest in the vast, quiet embrace of this ever-changing world. For that is where you will find your home.